for a few seconds.
Okay, we are live.
Thank you, Caitlin. Good evening, everyone. We'll start the meeting for for Thursday, the 23rd of September of the Newburyport Historical Commission shortly. We're just going to see if we can get one more of our commissioners roped into the panelist group here. Everybody else is already here, so we'll start momentarily. Appreciate your patience. And looks like we do have Malcolm now added. So let's see everyone here. 1, 2. Okay, I think we can now start. So I'll officially call to order the September 23rd meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission. I'll start with a quick roll call. I know we do have one member absent. That would be Commissioner Christopher Fay. I'll go through the others. Malcolm Carnwath.
Yes, here.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm. Mark Sandrone.
Present.
Okay, thank you. Peter McNamee.
Present.
Thank you. Joe Morgan.
Present.
Okay, great. Patricia Pecknick, Vice
Here.
Chair.
Here.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. And the Chair, Glenn Richards, is present and speaking. I'll quickly go through the rules. The commissioners only will have audio enabled during the meeting, except when the applicants will have their audio enabled when it is their time to speak and make presentations and what have you. I do expect to have public comment periods because we have a couple of, I expect to have a couple of hearings, public hearings with public comment period. So if you wish to speak during a public comment period, you must use the Zoom feature to raise your hand to be recognized. We know you want to speak. Caitlin will enable your audio on our end. You will also need to unmute yourself on your end. So take a moment if you think you're going to do that to familiarize yourself with those controls. If you're on the telephone, it's *9 to raise a hand, *6 to unmute yourself. And those kind of toggle. So *9 to raise or lower a hand, *6 to unmute or mute. And once you've been recognized, don't forget to lower your hand again. Okay, so those are the basic rules. By now, most of us are familiar with these Zoom meetings. We have a pretty full agenda, so I would ask you, if you do make public comment, to try to keep your comments brief. And we, for our part, will try to move along swiftly if possible. So we will move right into our first two demolition delay applications. The first one is for 64 Liberty Street. This was, they're building an addition here. So now I'm going to do something a little bit out of the ordinary here to possibly save time unless the attorney on behalf of the applicant or the applicant themselves objects. And that is, we've noticed, and I'm speaking here to the applicant or attorney Mead or whoever it is that's will be speaking for the applicant this evening. In the memo, it said that you expect that the commission will find the original structure is historically significant, and should be perfectly preserved, although you request that we don't impose the delay, but we accept the changes. So given that, does the applicant or applicant's attorney have any objection if we kind of move directly to a vote on simply on historical significance, and then you can proceed with your presentation and review both, the structure and your plans? Would that be all right?
Mr. Chair, this
Yes.
is Lisa Mead, Teller and Costa on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you.
Although I enjoy going over the historic aspects of these structures in particular, I don't think that there's any question that this structure is historically significant under the rules and of the ordinance. So I'm happy to have you go directly to that vote.
Okay. Thank you, Attorney Mead. Appreciate that. Let me first just check in with my fellow commissioners. So I assume you understand what I'm proposing here. Does anyone have any objection? Or if not, the chair will hear a motion to that the structure is historically significant and considered for preservation.
So move.
That sounded like Peter. Was that Peter?
Mark Sandron.
Mark. Thank you, Mark. Was there a second?
I'll second.
I thought it was sounding like Malcolm, right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm. So the motion is that it is historically significant and to be considered for preservation. So I'll take the roll call. Malcolm?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mark Syndrome?
Yes.
Thank you. Peter McNamee?
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Thank you. Patricia Pecknick?
Yes.
Thank you. And the chair is also a yes on that. Okay, so we got through that fairly quickly, and I know that we might do that again. We'll see how it goes. So Ms. Mead, I believe you have talking permitted. I see Julie McDonald. I'm sorry, but I'm not sure if that's the applicant or a architect or whatever. But anyway, why don't I turn the floor over to you, and you can tell us about your plans, which would include the demolition plans and also your plans for what you want to do in,
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and
Okay.
members of the commission. Again, Lisa Mead, Teller and Acosta, 30 Green Street in Newburyport, on behalf of the applicant, who is Eve Lee of 64 Liberty Street. With me this evening is Julie McDonald, as the chair noted, from Olson Lewis, who is the architect on the property. I think one thing I would like to point out, so you keep me on my toes, Mr. Chair. So I think if you could go to the slide right above the first photo, Caitlin, perhaps. And just, it's very small on our screens. I'm not really sure what's coming through on your screen, so I don't know if that is possible to blow up a little bit when it
Yeah,
comes.
she can zoom in on a portion if you want
Right.
to do that.
So I think what's important about this is the main historic structure has been in existence at least since the mid 1700s. There was a later added addition on the back, which is adjacent to Liberty Street, and that shows up on the Sanborn maps back to 1888 anyway. There was some time between 1988 and 1995, a porch, then later enclosed with an addition according to building permits that was on the inside of that addition, which would be adjacent to the property, the abutting property on Federal Street. So part of the current shed, kind of shedded roof addition on the rear. And if you could go to the first photo, please, Caitlin. Yeah, that's really small. I'm not sure what's happening tonight. So this, as you look to the right of the house, you can see the addition. That certainly, at least some form of that shows up back to the late 1800s. But then on the other side of that, and I'll show you that in a minute, there was a later added addition, which the neighbors directly on the rear have said was originally a covered porch. There's evidence in the building permit files that in 1995, a permit was issued to enclose that or put on an addition. So there was a more later added addition on the inside of this addition on the right-hand side of the structure. And so as you can see, this is from Liberty Street. If you go to the next slide, please. And here you can start to see that later added addition on the back. It kind of bumps out a little bit. When we go around, you'll see that there are sliders on it, and there are also skylights on it. So the next slide, please. And there are the sliders, and then you can see the skylights also. So that's the more recently added addition. Chris and Tom Tush, who live in the house directly beside it, as you can see, are the ones that have given us that information about the enclosure. The next slide, please. And here's from the corner of Liberty and Federal Street. And the next slide, please. And then this is on Federal Street, looking down in between the two structures on Federal. Next slide, please. And here's a little further back, so you can see the setting between the Tush's house and Eve's house. Next slide, please. And then this is a slide from Liberty Street coming down Liberty towards Federal. The applicant proposes to remove those later added additions and construct in its place a partial 2-story addition, which will include a slightly larger footprint. If you could go to the slide 18, I think there, Caitlin, there you go. And what Julie will go over in a minute is the attached elevations, which show that only a portion of the proposed additions will be 2 stories. The 1-story aspect of the proposed new addition will be adjacent to Liberty Street, stepping back about 5.5 feet from Liberty Street to the 2-story portion. Similarly, on the western side, the addition will only be 1 story and then stepping back towards the house to the 2-story addition. The 2-story portion exists toward the rear of the structure and is set away from the sides of the existing home, clearly differentiating the new from the old. The northern 2nd-story window, as Julie will go over with you, on the western side will also be shifted over to a new opening. We believe that the architect has been sensitive to the form of the existing structure, as you'll be able to see shortly. And the original form is quite obvious and unimpaired from the new addition. If you could go to the site plan, please. So the upper site plan are existing conditions, and the lower site plan, if you could just zoom in a little bit, Caitlin, on the lower site plan, please. So you can see the proposed new addition is slightly larger, going out to the west a little bit in footprint from the existing addition. Both of them, if you look closely, step back from the original structure. Importantly, the original structure actually goes over the property line to the south toward the Tushes. So we are respecting the property line, not surprising. And also that then brings it inside the existing historic structure. Similarly, along Liberty Street, will be stepped in slightly from the existing structure. And we did have a question earlier in the week from the staff. There's a tree that's shown in the middle of the deck there. That will remain. The deck will be built around the tree, so that will remain there. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Julie to talk about the existing elevations and the proposed elevations.
Hi, this is Julie McDonald from Olson Lewis Architects, representing Eve Lee, our client. So we wanted to go through the slides. We start with the existing. So we're looking at the north, Liberty Street. Facing west. This is where we see that addition that we were talking about that's got the newer portion to the right and then the older portion on the left. Simple shed addition with skylights. And here's where we see the gable end. This is facing the back, the south, very close to the property line. And as Attorney Mead said, on the far left side, we are actually over the property line at that rear corner. You could move forward to the next slide. Yeah, and this is the east elevation, which won't be changed at all, but we wanted to show it for your reference.
Excuse me, this is Joe Morgan. I have a comment or question. The references to the direction of the elevation, this is a different kind of this is a different standard than I'm used to. You're saying this is looking toward the east. I would call that a western elevation, though. Is that not true, or maybe I'm just disoriented here?
Yeah,
this is Mr. Morgan. This is the east side of the structure. This faces Federal Street.
The east
right.
side.
So Joe, if you went up to this particular side and turned around to face away from the building, you'd be looking eastward.
Okay, I'm sorry, I guess I'm just disoriented. This is on the northern side of Liberty Street?
No, the southern.
No, southern side. If we could, just to
I'm
orient.
sorry,
go.
I'm really sorry. I'm just
No, that's
turned around
okay.
here.
So,
Should we
Mr.
go-
Morgan, what we'll do is, just a minute, Julie, if you don't mind, if we could go to the site plan.
Yeah.
So
It's
this
not
is a corner,
straight north. Sorry.
right? So this, that's okay. This is the
Mhm.
corner of Liberty and Federal. If you were standing at the bottom of this plan and you
Yeah.
were looking at the structure, your back would be to the tannery.
Okay, so I'm looking here at the north arrow up there in the upper right. So
Yep,
north, called north is down on this sheet, right?
Right.
that's
Yes.
correct. That's
Okay,
correct.
I'm sorry. Very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that, Joe.
Yeah.
If you could go back to that elevation and let Eve pick up on the Federal Street elevation, please, Caitlin, thank you.
That's 23.
Yep.
And it is confusing because it's not straight east. It's not due east.
Right. Nothing is in this town.
Yeah, but it feels it. Okay, if we want to move to the next slide. And so here we see the existing and the addition. So what we really wanted to do was, of course, be subservient to the main house. We wanted to be lower, certainly at the 2-story, we're significantly lower. Although it stepped back, we still wanted to, at that second floor level, the roof line, we wanted the eave to align and go up from there. What you also see is that the 1-story piece is what's closest to Liberty Street. So that we liked that would allow, we wouldn't be so encroaching on the sidewalk. It would give some relief. And so we would just see the 1-story is closest to the face and the 2-story is set back. And then on the further right is another 1-story piece that's set even further back. And the windows are in what we're doing is we're still doing clapboards with corner boards. The windows are very similar to what we have at the existing, a little bit wider, so they're a little different. And we're also at the addition treating the trims a little more simply. So you'll note that at the main house, the original house, there's some very nice detail around the casings. And we wanted to do something similar, but it's going to be just flat and simple. So similar proportions, but really differentiating old to new. The other thing you'll see here is the materials noted. So we've got, in addition to the clapboards, we're also planning to do the cedar wood roof to match and be similar to, again, and respectful of the main part of the house. So yes, we could move to the next slide. So with the west elevation, this is where you can really see what the roof lines are. So with that 2-story piece and the 1-story below that projects towards us, we've got simple gable forms. Again, we wanted to do a couple things with that. We wanted to differentiate the new from the existing. We definitely didn't want to do another roof shape that was the same, a gambrel. And we also, in doing a simple gable, are keeping it lower. What changes on the main part of the house on this elevation is at the 3rd story or the attic. You'll see that one window is being replaced with a shorter window. So I've kind of got at that level, you can see that dashed line, which shows where the existing window is. So this would be replaced with a window of the same width and it's one light shorter. So we can keep the same proportion of lights within the window itself. And also on the main part of the house, on the second floor, you'll see at the left side of the addition, that window is a new window in that location. But in that case, it would match as close as we can to the existing, and the trims also would match what we have at the main part of the house. So it's only at the addition proper where we propose to go more simple. Also on this, you'll see that we're pulling in both at the right and the left. So the front and rear of the house, we're pulling in so that we aren't interrupting the roof lines of the main part of the house. Okay, we could move to the next slide. And here we see we're very close to property line. So we're not showing windows, but again, same roof lines, simple. We've got the materials noted, the same wood clapboards, corner boards, and the wood roof. Okay, and
Okay.
then I think the final is just more images, which Attorney Mead has already covered.
Yeah.
And then I would have, if I could, Mr. Chair, just
Yeah, go ahead.
one other thing. We did provide the board, the commission, with letters of support from the Tushes, who are the most immediate adjacent abutters on Federal Street, and the Stouts on 60 Liberty Street, which is the other adjacent parcel, but on Liberty Street, supporting the project. So with that, we'd be open to questions from the commission.
Thank you, Attorney Mead. Yeah, so what will happen next is before we go to public comment, which we'll do in a moment, I'll just check in with the other commissioners to see if someone has something they'd like to clarify or a question about what has been presented so far. I see a hand by Patricia Pecknick.
Oh, hi. I'm just wondering, what is the ridge height of the existing addition now? And what is the ridge height of the two-story part of the proposed addition?
So we have that on one of the plans.
Oh, you said the eaves will align, but I'm curious about
The ridge height.
yes.
So if you go to the proposed, I think, go down one more, see if we have it on that one.
The ridge height, I've got it here, Lisa. Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt. We see it on the west elevation. It's noted that the ridge height of the new is 22'4" approximately. And give me a minute, I will get I've got it, I'm able to measure where I am. To the top of the roof of that addition, we're about 12'8".
No,
Right.
what's the ridge height of the original is what the
Oh.
other.
Oh,
Okay.
of the main, oh, sure. Sorry, misunderstood. 20, it's almost 29 feet, 28'10" approximately.
Okay, and then the existing addition that's there now, that's going to be demoed, I guess.
Oh, yeah, I
height of
thought
that.
that's what you were, that's what I was mentioning originally. So that number is it's approximately 12'7" to that high point where it hits the house.
Okay. And 22.4 approximately is the new, will be the height of the new, the two-story addition.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions from West Panel? Mark Sandron?
Yes, Mark Sendron. Can you explain to me why the width of the windows are being changed on the proposed addition?
Well, a couple of things we didn't think that we should necessarily exactly copy what we have at the main house. We'd certainly be open to it if that was something that the commission felt strongly about. But the existing windows are fairly narrow, and so we thought it was a good opportunity to deviate a little bit from the existing and get a little bit better windows for the new part. They're, let me look to see what they are. Yeah, they're, give me a second, I'm juggling drawings. Yeah, they're just a little over 2 foot wide.
Which,
The existing, at the second floor, about
Mhm.
25 inches.
Mhm.
First floor,
yeah, that sounds like a late
Okay.
17th century. It should be 18th century. Yeah.
yeah. Again, it felt like we certainly looked at that early in the design process, and they felt small for the addition.
Right.
But they certainly would be in keeping with the rest of the house.
Mm-hmm. And it may be that something that you want us to look at for that north Liberty Street elevation.
Yeah. So would you say, this is Glenn speaking, would you say that even though this is a sketch rather than, strictly like a CAD drawing or whatever, that these proportions are pretty accurate as far as the widths and, all the dimensions and proportions of the existing windows and the ones in the addition?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
and they're sketched over hardline sketches, so
Oh,
they all
okay.
come from the
Right.
real
Okay.
sizes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You good, Mark? Yeah. Ms. Becknick, I see your hand is still up. Was that just history or did you have another question? Oh, went down. Okay. Looks like those are the only hands. I just had also had a window question, but slightly different. Could you just describe in a little bit more detail? I think on the plans it said wood SDL windows. Could you give us a little bit better details to what precisely that means in terms of the what kind of muntins one can expect and that kind of thing?
Yes, they well, as I'm sure that you guys have discussed many times as part of your reviews.
Yeah.
SDL is simulated divided
Mhm.
lights, and so we would be we're looking at Marvin for this,
Mhm.
but their wood option, the 5/8 inch SDL. So we'd be seeing at the exterior, you'd be seeing, of course, the real muntin profile. Those are adhered to the glass with the spacer bar. So up on the interior, which you're not as concerned about, we see the same thing.
Mhm. And is there spacers between? I assume it's double paned. Is there spaces in between the glass as well? So
Exactly.
okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you get the pretty good impression of divided lights.
Yeah. Yeah. I think especially the wood units are
Mhm.
really successful.
Right. Is the exterior wood as well? Sometimes the exterior is clad.
Yeah. Ours will be wood.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think I heard you say this, the only existing window that's changing is that one up in the attic, or is that other one also changing on the second floor?
The second floor one is actually new.
Oh, okay, there's no window there now.
Because there's no window there now.
Okay.
There's one that gets covered, maybe two. I need to look again at that.
Okay.
With the addition, there's two actually that get covered with the addition.
Okay. And you did say they're going to try to match that one window as closely as you can to the existing. So does that mean approximately that 25-inch width and all that?
I would love your input on that. We're actually showing that same, a wider one there as well.
Mhm.
Although, as I mentioned, we would, the hope was to still, or the intent is to still match all the trim profiles but I guess I felt like at that elevation, it seemed like it was appropriate to go wider, that it was okay. But if you really felt like viewing from that corner, it would make sense to see them the same, I think that would be fine. I
Okay.
can see that argument too.
Okay. Then that's all the questions I had. I think it's all the questions we had right now. So why don't I go ahead and officially open a public comment period. So what this means is that if you are a member of the public who in attendance and you would like to comment on this application, please do raise your hand and we will unmute you on our end. if you get unmuted, unmute yourself on your end, and you may speak, and we'll recognize you by your whatever name you've got displayed here. And I do see one hand up. Looks like Mr. Thomas Coulter-John. So, and we've enabled you, Tom, so you can speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you. Tom Coulter-John, 64 Federal Street, co-president of the Newburyport Preservation Trust. The design of the addition to 64 Liberty Street actually looks very nice and does not seem to intrude on the main historic early 18th century gambrel. So my compliments to the architect. However, there are a few problems with the addition that relates to the gambrel itself. So please remember that this is an early Georgian, and as a result is very heavily framed. It has heavy beams and lots of wind braces, and the wind braces go at angles, say from the second floor plate into the corner post, both at the plate and at the third floor. So at some point, there must be a passage from the old house to the new, both on the first floor and the second floor. And I'm concerned that that's where that there will be damage to the historic structure. And I think building an addition such as this will cause damage to the historic structure. One other point, the house also sits on a postage stamp lot. The owner proposes to fill it in even further with this significant addition. So it's unfortunately, this is, I guess you call it classic infill, and fills too much of the lot. And then it tends to dominate the lot. And we've been trying in the south end to prevent that where possible. I just one other comment, since it was made, I fully agree with Commissioner Sendron's comments about the width of the windows on the new addition. Thank you very much. Hello?
Glenn, I think you're muted.
I am muted, sorry. If Mr. Coulter-John, before you go, did you mean when you agreed with Commissioner Sendron, did you mean that you agree that the windows probably should be as narrow as the ones in the main, the historical house?
Yes, they seem too large for the addition. That just visually, they seem too large.
Okay,
Thank
you for clarifying that. You see if there are any other, thank you, Mr. Kay. Let me see if there are any other attendees that have, not seeing any other hands. Give another moment. Looks like we don't have any. And time being an issue, we will close the public comment period. And I'll turn back to my fellow commissioners for their thoughts and opinions on this. And the process we've been using of late is to just kind of go around the horn, so to speak. So I'll just take you in the more or less in alphabetical order, or the order you're showing on my screen here. The first one I see here is Commissioner Sendron. So Mark, in addition, what are your comments or thoughts regarding whether or not this, the plan looks like it is appropriate, meets the guidelines, and is approvable as it is, or maybe requires some changes?
I have to say that it's approvable, but I would certainly be concerned about the width of the window and also the size of the addition compared to what was already there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, Peter McNamee, I see you're next on my screen here. What are your thoughts?
I don't have an issue with the window widths myself. Visually, I think it's pretty pleasing. I like the massing of the addition, so I have no issues with that there. The infilling is a concern, but I again, I'm willing to stretch a point for something that improves the aspect of the house, which I think this does.
Hmm.
With regards to the structure that Tom John mentioned, the structural integrity of the structure, I certainly agree with that. But I think that that is something that we should require to be addressed properly by, an appropriate engineering study.
Right. Well, and I'll invite the applicant or their attorneys and architects to address that question after we get through this round. So hold on to your thoughts on that one. Thank you, Peter. Next up, I've got, let's see who's next. Joe Morgan, your thoughts?
It looks like a great solution. I'm for it. Looks good. No other comments.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Mr. Carnwath, Malcolm, your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I like this plan. I think it's wonderful. I'm not worried about the window size or any of the structural stuff. I think that it looks good, and it's easier to license to architect, which I assume they are. They should be good. So I'm good with everything.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, I should note that since there is an addition already there probably are already openings to the original house, but we'll get back to that when we go through. Ms. Pecknick, your thoughts?
Yes, I want to say that the house's deed history has been researched by the previous owner. So there's a plaque on the house that identifies it as the Jonathan Sampson house from circa 1730. So it is quite an early house. I do agree with Mr. Coulter, John, about the handsome design, but I also agree with his concerns about how this can be accomplished without impairing the historic structure. I do agree with Mr. Sundron as well that, going up, 10 feet more on that addition I think that will impact the house more than expanding the footprint. It's right on the street. And finally, we have to approve a specific plan, not just a concept. So if it says approximately 22.4, will that become 26 or 27? We're looking at Marvin Wood. Well, that's not, the windows aren't presented here. So I wouldn't approve something that wasn't a specific plan that listed all the materials and dimensions.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. Well, most of the concerns I also had have already been mentioned, so I won't review them again. I think it was either Joe or someone that pointed out that maybe it was Peter that the infill is a concern, but overall, I think design-wise, it's a more consistent appearing design. So that's a plus. It's one of these trade-off situations. I wish, whenever we get into gray area, I try to think, okay, what do the standards say? And think about it in that respect. I think that I like the fact that they have set it in, which the current edition does not, by the way. It's in the Liberty Street side. It's on the same plane as the original structure, which I'm not a big fan of. It is set back, which is good. They also kept that side to 1 story. That's good. I think the styling is good. I agree with Vice Chair's comments about getting a really final nailed down design. I think we're off to a very good start. So why don't I see if the applicant either maybe what's her name? Was it if not Julie Mcdonald? Maybe you can address the issue. Hopefully you understand. I know those of us familiar with timber frame construction know exactly what Mr. Coltrajon is talking about. There are not only heavy posts and heavy beams, but also fairly heavy bracing structures which run diagonally between those two. And contractors, if they're not familiar with how these houses are framed, and in the older ones, as he pointed out, they are quite substantial members. You need to understand where they are and what they do, so you don't accidentally cut into something that's going to compromise the structural integrity of the original house, which would be That's something we don't want to do. And also, that what your interior layout design is compatible with where those openings can safely go. So can you comment on that?
Sure. Mr. Chair, this is Lisa Mead. A couple of things. So I think that we certainly will bring back, we will ask for a continuance, but I want to just address some of the items that the commission talked about. We will certainly come back with the more specific description of the windows as requested. Also the exact dimension, which is 22.4 of that. We'll give you a line drawing instead of the sketch so that there's no question about that. I would just point out to the board relative to the interior work, which of course we don't need to go down that path, but it already has an addition on the first floor. So the first floor already has openings, as the commission knows. But we will be more specific about where the openings are on the second floor. As you well know, and most of you I'm sure know of Olson Lewis Architects, who are a very reputable architectural firm and are not unfamiliar with working on historic homes across the North Shore.
Right.
And so you should have great confidence that they will be doing the right thing there. So we can give that back to you. I guess, I wonder if you would like to see the smaller windows on an elevation as compared, just to give you an idea of size. The new proposed windows are 30 inches. And as you heard, the existing are about 24. So that's the difference in the sizes. But if you would like to see how that looks, we will bring that back to you as well.
Thank you, Attorney Mead. A quick question on this north elevation we're looking at right now. The second story windows look a little smaller, but is that just because they're a little bit further away, but they're actually the same size as the first
Julie,
floor?
can you answer that question about the size of the two separate windows, first and second floor?
Yes, actually, at the second floor, we are a little narrower. Those are 2'4" versus the 2'6" at the first floor level.
Okay.
Which is a little bit of differentiation of floor to floor.
Yeah. Yeah, that might, okay. If you're, that would be great, Attorney Mead, if I understand you correctly, get the, final and kind of cleaned up drawings. And if you're, willing to take that step of letting us be able to kind of see, so we can get I think we can get a consensus vote on which we think is more historically accurate or appropriate, or which better conforms to the standards. It sounds like Ms. Mcdonald, if I understood what she was saying correctly, that she's quite correct, and I know you've mentioned this before, Attorney Mead, that there should be, when you're making an addition to a historic structure, you don't want to slavishly copy it, because you want to have differentiation. You want people to be able to see that, okay, this is the historic part, this is an addition, but you want it to be stylistically compatible. And I think the people that have complimented your design, Ms. Mcdonald, I think that's what they're responding to. It looks like you've endeavored to do that. But again, not slavishly copying, but being stylistically consistent and so on. So, I agree with my peers that you've done a good job. Personally, I think that my own personal view is I think probably the 2'4" windows would probably work well, and that would make them all consistent on the first and second floors. I think we'd have better consistency within the addition. That's just my personal take on it. Okay. So yeah, and that's something that, when you come back, which I think we can do soon. Do you think let's see, we'll do a continuance to a date specific, as we usually do.
Why don't we do your next meeting? When is your next meeting, Mr. Chair?
I'm about to find out. So just give me 1 second here. Today, I believe it'd be the second Thursday, right, Caitlin, so the 14th? That's a question for Caitlin. Are you there? I know you're there, but maybe you're muted.
I'm here. Yep, it's the 14th.
Okay, yeah, that would be October 14th.
So we'd request a continuance to October 14th, Mr. Chair,
Right.
to provide that information to the commission.
Okay. Let me make a quick note here. Yeah, October. Okay, and is there a motion, can the chair hear a motion to continue this matter without prejudice to the meeting of the 14th of October?
I don't
So
know.
moved.
Okay, I think that was Malcolm moving it. Is it seconded?
I'll second that. This is Peter.
Okay, thank you, Peter. We'll go around the horn. Mr. Conwath, your vote?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Syndrome?
Yes.
Okay, Peter McNamee?
Yes.
Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Vice Chair, Patricia?
Yes.
Okay, and the chair is a yes as well. Okay, so we'll do that. Thank you for your flexibility and cooperation, Attorney Mead and applicant, if you're there. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks, and hopefully we can get this resolved. I think that from what I'm hearing, the chances are good, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you very much.
Sure. And
Thank you.
thank you, Ms. McDonald. Appreciate your coming in. And I know Attorney Mead will, I'm sure you won't be going anywhere. I believe you will be hearing from you on a couple other matters, such as the next one I'm moving on to, which is 12 Horton Street. This is a similar situation. We have a newer house, late 19th century, but is listed as contributory. Doesn't have a Form B, but it is listed. And again, with this one, it's a similar situation as with the first matter. Attorney Mead has suggested that that she expects the commission will find that it's historically significant and should be preferably preserved, whether or not we agree to the formal plans. So the same question, Attorney Mead, would you be averse or adverse to us moving swiftly to to the vote on the motion as to it being historically significant and considered for preservation?
I don't, Mr. Chair. Again, Lisa Mead, Teller and Costa, on behalf of Lisa Adams and David Miller, who are the owners of the property. I will say, I certainly don't. And the record shows all of the history. Mary Eaton was kind enough, as you all know, to provide some additional color around this section of the city. And my hope is that folks take a look at it, because it is certainly interesting to learn how Horton Street in the area generally was laid out.
Yes, I did see some of that, and that was interesting. So thank you for providing that history. Okay, is there a motion to move that the structure is historically significant and should be considered for preservation?
So moved, Mark Sendron.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Is there a second?
I'll second. That's Peter.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Okay, voting. Malcolm Conwath?
Yes.
Thank you. Mark Sendron?
Yes.
Thank you. Peter McNamee?
Yes.
Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Patricia Peckneck?
Yes.
And the chair is yes. So we can move on to the review of both the demolition plans and the construction plans. So I'll turn it over to the, I assume Attorney Mead, you'll be speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Yes, I will. Thank you. And as I said, I'm here with the applicants, Lisa Adams and David Miller, who are the owners of the home, and Kevin Latity, who is the architect. I will say,
Okay.
Sadly, they are the owners of the home, but have not been able to live in the home since early this year. They were away out of state for a while. A water pipe broke in the house, caused significant damage, such that the house actually, and you can see in this photo, there's nothing in the back of the house, rendered the house actually uninhabitable until it was completely redone for a whole host of reasons because of water damage for so long throughout the house. This is a good photo. And if we could just stay here for a second, Caitlin, this is where all of the work is going to be done. Nothing is going to happen on the front of the house, and there will be some window changes on the side, which Kevin will go through. But this lower part of this house is a later added 1980s addition. This porch was converted into a mudroom. So that will be changed because it will have a second floor added on top of that. You can go to the slide 13, please. So they're not proposing, as I said, to change any of the front part of the house. There's a couple of changes with regards to the windows on the side. All of the changes are going to be to the rear of the house, which are essentially not viewable from the street. The work will include the reconstruction of the existing floor bump out, as well as the on the first floor bump out. The addition will be within the same footprint of the existing structure. There's no change in the footprint. Importantly, the most distinctive architectural features of the home visible from Horton Street will remain as is, as I said before. There will be a roof line change as a result of that second floor bump out on the back, and the first floor flat roof of the later added mudroom porch on the back will be changed. We believe that the architect has designed the addition over the first floor and replacing the second floor rear bump out to be complementary to and subservient to the existing historic structure. The roof line is lower than the original house, yet the gable is appropriate for the design of the original structure. Further, while the plane of the westerly wall is flush with the historic structure and not stepped in this instance, that's important because of the flare that extends along the side of the house. And Kevin will talk about that a little bit. So the easterly side is stepped back and significantly away from the most easterly wall of the structure, which we'll show in a minute too. So if you could go to the site plan, Caitlin, please. So here is the site plan. That's not changing at all. Everything's going to be done within these lines. And with that, I'm going to have you go to the next slide, which will be the beginning of the elevations. Kevin?
Good evening. This is Kevin Latati. Actually, the last name is pronounced Latati.
Sorry, Kevin.
That's all right. It's not a common name, so most people get it wrong. And that's how I know if you don't know me. So the elevations, the existing north elevation is Horton Street elevation. There are no changes to that. The significant elevation that you do see from Horton Street is along existing east elevation. What you're seeing in the pink there, or the reddish tone, is the second floor bump out back bedroom. That's going to be enlarged to encompass the whole width of the back of the house. And you'll see that in the updated elevations on the next slide. There is a chimney in the lower roof area that's coming out. That was an added fireplace that I believe was done at one of the kitchen renovations. We're also proposing to remove the chimney at the center of the house. There is no fireplace connected to that chimney, and as far as I can tell through the framing of the house and the nor in the basement was there ever a fireplace connected to that chimney. Right now it's used only for the boiler, and at the first floor it appears that at one point there may have been a wood stove connected to it. We're proposing to remove it because in the floor plan it's where we want to access the attic. That's right in the middle of an attic access. Currently, the attic is a very narrow, steep staircase that, with the renovation and the changes, will be pushed back, and we're going to remove that. The elevation, the south elevation, is really where all the work is going to be done. That's the picture Lisa had shown earlier of the back of the house. Then on the—
Excuse me, may I interrupt again? I'm sorry, this is Joe Morgan.
Hi, Joe.
Yes, hi, I'm sorry, Mr. Latati. I'm disoriented.
That's okay.
Is this on the north side of the street?
That's the street is on the north side, yes, which is drawing number 1.
That's,
So the street is on the north side, the house is on the south side of the street.
That's correct.
that's correct.
Okay. For some reason, I'm again thinking this house is on the north side of Horton.
No.
But okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you.
So, and then on drawing number 4, which is the west elevation, which is very tight up against the abutter's house, we are relocating windows. One of the things that we haven't mentioned yet, the current stair that goes from the first to the second floor, typical of a late 19th century house, that goes up one step to a winder, up a number of stairs to again, a winder at the top, and it's quite steep. It's 10-inch treads with 8-inch risers. And one of the desires of the owners has always been to rebuild the stairs to make it a little bit easier on the knees, to make it more compliant with code. And most importantly, currently they cannot get any furniture up that stair. This furniture that they get into the house for the second floor is lifted up to the rear of the house onto that deck and through that double door on the back of the house you see on slide number 3. I mean, not slide number 3, but image number 3, drawing number 3. So they've always had the desire to change these stairs, and when this flood happened, it gave them the opportunity to do that. So in doing that, we wanted to locate a window at the bottom of the stairs, reusing some of the existing windows. And on the second floor, you see the windows relocating again for the renovated layout. And so, but you know, again, that's a side of the house that isn't so visible from Horton Street. So we thought that would be fine. Of course, welcome your comments.
Another quick interruption. Were you done?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Can you explain the blue color on on most of the windows, what that represents?
That's just our CAD program.
Okay, so it doesn't mean anything.
That doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
No, sorry, it's just the CAD program identifies everything. And if I switch the CAD program to print it out in black and white, it also
Right.
changes some of the subtleties of the grays. So
yeah, okay. And by the way, I like the way you've shaded the areas that are affected by demolition. That's very helpful. As you know, it's one of the we very rarely get very clear quote demolition plans, and that this is actually very helpful to us. The only part of this that I'm a little confused by is the changing around of the fenestration on that west elevation there. You explained how it was, I believe, driven by the stair change, but can you just clarify exactly like which windows are existing and which are new and what's moving where and so on?
sure. There is let's look at from left to right. So there's a window on the second floor to the furthest to the left, that's staying.
Right.
The window that's a little shorter
Mhm.
is currently in the bathroom, the existing bathroom, and because the stairs are being elongated, the bathroom is being pushed back, and then that little bullseye circle and the arrow going to that pink area is where it's being relocated.
I see.
The window that's on the far right, you see the little
Yep.
dot and the arrow pointing
Yep.
to that red shaded area. That's where that's going.
Okay, so that one's moving leftward, and the small one, the bathroom, is moving to the rear there. Okay, got
And
it.
then on the first floor, you see the little bullet point and pointing to the left, and then you only see it as a half window. Because it's at the stair, we're going to use the upper sash, not
Okay.
the entire window, because we don't want to have someone's knee go through the window.
Okay, and
So- I think I was just saying, unless you have more questions about this, if Kevin goes through the proposed, it might be more obvious.
go right ahead.
So here's the proposed. Again, Drawing number 1 is indicating the existing front facade, which isn't changing. Drawing number 2 is the, if you're looking from Horton Street, it's the left side of the house where the driveway is. So we're building back where currently the kitchen is, and it's a 1-story part of the building. We're building a 2nd floor above that. Adding those 2 windows. And then at the back side, or on the far left, that's the addition above the current porch and where the deck is now. Adding windows, etc. The windows, by the way, I think there's a sheet that describes the finish, the exterior materials, but the windows, one iteration we're going to use Pella Reserve, but we've since then are going to go with a Geldwin wood window. Muntins will be, it's a SDL windows with spacers. Muntins will match the existing windows, and they'll be 5/8 wide. The idea is to, replicate the feel of the existing house, or at least work with that. The drawing number. Go ahead. Question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. I was just going to. Are they 2/1 existing? I forgot from the photographs.
The existing is 2/1. Correct.
Okay.
So we're doing the same with any of the windows we're putting in. Drawing number 3 is the rear elevation. The 2nd floor of that rear elevation, you can see it forms a roof over the deck coming out of the mudroom with gives a porch, gives a roof over the porch, as well as gives more width to what will become a bedroom. But and then drawing 4 is the side of the house, which we were just talking about on the previous slide, showing where the windows will end up going, giving you a better sense of how that looks without being pink, etc.
Right.
And then the materials are on the last page. Kevin submitted the materials.
And the detailing will match what's there, and it will complement. My feeling is it will complement the house and be historically appropriate.
Mm-hmm. I see existing windows that need tuning up, as you put it here, or repairs, or restoration. Those, rather than replacing them, you're having those restored.
Yes, no, I'm a true advocate of not throwing away a 200-year-old, 150-year-old product that's better made than most of the new windows.
Well, I think we on the board feel the same way. All right, was that it?
I think I covered everything, but I'm sure people have questions.
Yep.
So
okay.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
just want to point out to the board also, before the board goes into their questions, we've submitted letters of support from all of the surrounding neighbors, 6 of them, who are in favor and have reviewed these plans, and are hoping the board also releases this to move on to the zoning board.
Thank you, Attorney Meaden. Yes, we saw that you had loaded those letters. Thank you. Let me just, Caitlin, could you go back one slide to 17? I just had one real quick question. I think I got this. So looking at the upper right to the east elevation, where the roof kind of notches down there, am I correct to say that higher ridge line, that's all that's the existing structure? So so the part that you're building out or modifying is strictly that lower roof line there.
That actually, if you go back to slide 16, it'll be a
Okay.
better picture for you. You can
Ah,
see,
okay.
okay?
Yeah, now I see. So that was
That's why I
incorrect.
do, yeah, that's why I do that on the demo plans, because it makes it easier for
Yep.
us to see how that
Yes.
works.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so you're extending that original a bit. And
Yes.
that was why you were kind of trying to make it look original by continuing the flare and all that good
it's
stuff.
kind of awkward the way the house has that kitchen with a lower roof there, and it doesn't extend back.
Yeah.
So it just, you know, it almost felt like this is what they wanted to do, but hadn't gotten around to it yet.
Okay.
And I specialize in older and historic homes, and it really is about the storytelling of, you know, you start with one room, then they just keep going from there. And it almost had that feeling like, well, they just hadn't got to it yet.
Okay, well, let me turn to my fellow panelists here. Does anyone have first of all, before we do the public comment period, does anyone have a question or clarification of anything on their minds before we go to public comment? Yes, no, maybe. Looks like people are okay, not hearing or seeing any comment. Okay, so, and thank you, Attorney Mead and Mr. Latati. So I will officially open a public comment period, same rules as before. If you weren't there, this is that you raise your hand using the Zoom controls to indicate to us that you would like to speak so we can recognize you and unmute you. If you're on the phone by any chance, it's *9 to raise a hand, *6 to unmute yourself. You will need to unmute yourself on your end as well to speak. So public comment period is open. Please, anyone who wishes to speak, please raise a hand. I'll allow several seconds to see if anyone wishes to do so. While I take a sip of water. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll go ahead and move on. I'll close the public comment period and turn to my peers and compatriots on the commission. So let's see what your thoughts and comments are. The first one I have just on my random Zoom display here is as Mr. Joe Morgan. Any thoughts and opinions on the plans?
No, it seems to be a logical development of the residential program as it exists. And since it's moving to the rear, and the front facade is conserved, I think that's appropriate. It doesn't raise any flags for me. I would like to just ask, what's the year of the building once again?
Late 1890s.
Yeah.
And is this all dimensional lumber?
And in the existing structure,
Yeah.
it is a balloon frame, sawn lumber. The bottom, the foundation, rubble with brick laid on top, and the sill is a 8x8 beam with balloon frame above.
Right.
Okay.
Does that answer the question, hopefully?
Yes, thank you. It was just for information. I have no other comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, who else? Mark Cindrone, and your thoughts?
Thank you. Just a quick practical question. If you're going to take that chimney down, where is your boiler chimney going to be?
It's direct vent.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Could you repeat that?
It will be direct vented,
Okay, thank you.
and it will probably go to the east, the west side, direct venting.
Yeah, I think the flood was due to a heating system failure, so I assume that's a new heating system or something you're putting in.
Yeah, actually, the flood was a pipe going to the second floor bathroom, and since it was the second floor, it flooded the first floor walls, ceilings, and then the basement became a swimming pool.
It sounds awful.
So the boiler, everything was pretty much toasted down there.
Yep. All right. Well, our sympathies with the applicant, but anyway, moving on. Let's see, Vice Chair Pecknick, any thoughts or comments?
No, I support this. I was going to support it when I did the site visit and looked at the plants and walked around the street, but then they had me at Window Woman of New England. So
Okay.
I'm sorry, what did they have you at?
Window Woman of New England that you're restoring. Window.
I've known and worked with Allison for, I don't know, 15 or more years. We've gotten into a lot of trouble together.
Oh, good. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Patricia. Mr. McNamee, any thoughts?
Have no comments.
Okay, thank you. Malcolm, any thoughts from you?
No, I'm perfectly happy with this. Looks great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, did I miss anyone? Looks like I've been through everyone, right? Just checking. Yeah, I think I got everybody. Okay, and speaking for myself, I think everyone's pretty much said what I was going to say and ask. Mark asked my question about the chimney. I kind of surmised that it was probably going to be a new system with a direct vent and all that. Kind of for nostalgia reasons, you know, I kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other as far as save the chimney for aesthetic reasons or not. I don't really have a real issue with it. I wrestled a little bit with building out at least part of the addition in a way that mimics the existing, but I think in this case, even an ardent preservationist would understand the motivation here, and I think from what I've heard from my colleagues, we're pretty much in agreement that, especially from that south elevation, the rear of the house, it's the somewhat hodgepodgey aspect of that will be significantly improved, and sounds like a fairly well thought out and tasteful addition to this house. So I don't have any oppositions either. So having said that, would someone care to make the motion that the plans that have been submitted are acceptable to, and we can lift the demolition delay? Actually, I take that back. We have to first vote as to whether we had voted earlier that it's historically significant and considered for preservation. We haven't yet voted that it's preferably preserved. So just to follow the formalities of the ordinance, we should do that, and then we can take another vote on releasing the demo delay, which sounds like we're good with. So is there a motion that the structure should be is preferably preserved?
Mark Sendron, so move.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that. It's Peter.
Peter, thank you. Okay, sorry, let me catch up with my note. Okay, quick roll call. So we'll start with I do it in alphabetical order. So Mr. Carnwath.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, Mark Sendron.
Yes.
Thank you. Peter McNamee.
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Okay, Patricia Pecknick.
Yes.
And the chair is also yes. Okay, so we've decided that it is preferably preserved, which imposes the demolition delay. Is there a motion to release the delay, release it from the delay based on the submitted plans?
So moved.
That was Malcolm, I believe.
Yep.
Let me hang on a second. Let me catch up with my notes here. Is it seconded?
Second, Mark Sendron.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, we'll do a roll here. Mr. Carnwath.
Yes.
Thank you. Mark Sendron.
Yes.
Thank you. Peter, back to me.
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Vice Chair Pecknick.
Yes.
And the chair is yes as well. So this means if the applicant is listening, I'm sure you're smiling. So this means that the demo delay was only imposed for probably less than a minute, and we look forward to you have successfully executing your plans. Thank you, Mr. Latati, for your presentation and design, and good luck with getting this done and moving back into your house.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I believe, Ms. Mead, you're still with us, right, for Olive Street, is that right?
I am.
Okay, all right, so we move to the next item on the agenda. This is 22 Olive Street. And I will turn it over to you, Ms. Mead, to introduce the updates to your plan. But let me first, for both for the board, but mostly for any members of the public, as to what we're about with this phase. The Historical Commission has already found this structure to be historically significant and preferably preserved, as these previous two we just did, and there was a demolition delay imposed. Now, the demolition ordinance states that this demolition delay is enforced for 1 year unless, and I'm quoting here, the NHC has been satisfied that the applicant has made a bona fide, reasonable, and unsuccessful effort to locate a person willing to purchase or lease and to preserve, rehabilitate, or restore the preferably preserved building or structure, or B, the applicant has agreed to accept a demolition permit upon specified conditions approved by the commission. Such conditions may include the review and approval by the commission of a revised set of the submitted site plans according to the requirements of section C1F. So this is where we are now. Attorney Mead, I believe, is going to present some revised plans that they've been working on since this was originally put under the demo delay, I don't know, about I think a bit over a month ago. So with that, I'll turn it over to Attorney Mead to present the revised plans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the members of the commission. Lisa Mead, Tellerman Costa, 30 Green Street. On behalf of John Sarkis, who's the manager of 22 to 24 Olive Street LLC, and who is with me this evening, as well as the architect on the project, Ernest DeMaio. And we're going to go through the changes that have occurred since we last met with the commission. I might remind the commission we had certainly an informative discussion at the last time that we were here. We then had a site visit where some members of the commission participated, as well as some of the neighbors participated. Following those interactions, both the architect and the owner spent a significant amount of time trying to incorporate to the extent feasible and practicable those comments that were received. And let me just tell you overall what we did before Ernie goes through the revised plans. The elevation on the first floor in the addition has been lowered by approximately 18 inches, which drops the entire mass of the proposed addition. The height of the connector roof has been lowered by 4 feet 2 inches, and the highest ridge of the addition has been lowered by 2 feet 5 inches. The architectural relief has been added to the south, north, and west elevations by stepping back a portion of the structure. And as I'm going to show you in a little bit, what does that mean? It means that actually not only is the proposed addition all within the required setback, which it was before, it's also more narrow and smaller than the existing footprint of the historic structure. These changes are very visible on the Rushes Street facade and at the rear yard facade nearest the residence on the downhill side. The total square footage of the newly proposed living space has been reduced by 247 square feet. The net amount of floor area being added has been reduced from 1,758 square feet to approximately 1,511 square feet. That's about an 11% reduction measured on the proposed new construction and 14% on the newly added space. If you go to the next slide, the siding material has been changed from cementitious clapboards to brick. The applicant would like the option to keep the brick natural, but would discuss it being painted. The fenestration patterns have been changed to predominantly individual double hung windows versus the mauled windows in the previous design. And Ernie has added some nice surrounds and keystones above those windows as well. I probably used the wrong term there. I'll let him do that. The change in the middle section now exposes approximately 46 square feet more of the original building's brick wall. You might recall that we were already exposing a significant amount of that rear wall on the original structure, having been covered up by both of the additions on the back and we were exposing some windows that had been covered up by those additions. We're now exposing another 46 square feet. The pitch of the roof over the middle portion has been lowered so that its ridge does not overlay the roof of the original brick building. This area will now have a standing seam metal roof to further delineate the new from the old. The skewed or angled position of the proposed addition has been changed so that the walls are now all right angles. That was some comments that were made by a couple of the commission members and discussed when we went out on the site visit. The roof overhangs have been added to the front and rear entry doors of the new addition. The addition is differentiated by color and material as required under the interior standards and is compatible, however, still with the structure by the size, scale, and massing. Indeed, there is a lot less lot coverage now on the site under the proposed site than there is under the existing conditions. In the future, if one were want to remove this addition, it could do so without damaging the original form or integrity of the original structure. So with that, what I'd like to do is go to the next slide, which is the site plan, because I think it's really important. So as I said, a couple of things. You can see by the mass of the addition, which is crosshatched, the existing addition that goes all the way to almost to the sides of the historic structure. And so obviously that is going to be taken off. The new addition, you will see, actually is not even as wide as the historic structure. In fact, significantly less on the rear side of it, or the which would be the north side right there. Significantly less or more narrow, if you will, step back from the side yard than the original structure. Also, as I mentioned, given the removal of that broader addition that exists today, as well as the existing garage, the lot coverage is much less, and the open space on the lot is more than under existing conditions. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ernie.
Thank you, Lisa. Ernest Mayo from Tectonics Architects. I think Lisa covered the particulars very well, so I think I'm going to move into the images specifically so you can see the project. This view, this three-dimensional view, is from Olive Street. You can see the original building in the foreground and the addition peeking out through the backside. The red brick portion of the building that's protruding is the addition, with an additional chimney added to tie into the existing building. Next slide, please. This is a view from the corner of Olive and Russia Street. As Lisa mentioned, the addition has been straightened, if you will, so that the planes of the Russia Street facades are all now in keeping with the plane of the original building. However, the main body of the addition has been set back slightly further than it was in the last presentation. We have also set the connector middle portion back even further from the addition facade than in our last iteration, so that there is a significant void between the main mass of the addition and the existing building. We've also articulated the main mass of the addition, the far end of it, by setting it back further. So these are techniques that we're using to try to reduce the apparent mass of the building when viewed from the street. Each one of these changes in setback is serving to have the mass not only be smaller, but appear visually smaller, which was a concern in the last meeting. Next slide, please. This view is a view from Russia Street looking towards the building and towards Olive Street. We have, our next slide will show it with the tree removed, but we wanted to show it with the tree in place that we're keeping in place. This is the revised addition, you can see that we've reduced the mass of the inmost portion of the building by setting it back further from Russia Street. The window patterns, as Lisa referred to, are now individual windows. We have eliminated any double or mulled type of windows from the project. The windows are in keeping with the general aesthetic of the windows from the original building that we're keeping. Next slide, please. Here, we've removed the tree just so that we can visually see the entire project full view. The connector between the red brick portion of the building and the original building, actually the roof line dies underneath the eave of the existing roof. We no longer overlay the original historic roof, which we think accentuates and celebrates the original building even further than we had done previously. We have added metal roofs to the roof overhangs and the connector roof, and also the bay that we show here in the foreground, as a way of distinguishing the materials from the original building and also allowing us to drop the slopes of the roofs far enough so that we can tuck down lower and reduce the apparent mass further. Next slide, please. This slide, this aerial view taken hovering above Russia Street, I think illustrates the distinction and mass between the proposed addition and the original building. We're less than 2/3 the size of the original building. The setbacks off Russia Street have been increased. The setbacks off the side and rear yards have been increased. Next slide, please. Shows the trees removed so one can get a sense for just how large the lot is and how much open space exists around all of the buildings. In fact, when compared to neighboring sites, the addition that we're proposing, virtually centered on the lot, is further away from its lot lines than a large majority of the buildings in the neighborhood. I think that's a very important point. And I also believe that given the size of the lot, the addition that we're proposing is in keeping with the scale of the lot. Next image, please. So this is a two-dimensional flat elevation of the building. The upper one is along Russia Street, and the lower one is along Olive Street. From Olive Street, the addition cannot be seen when viewed directly 90 degrees to the main facade. Along Russia Street, you can see how we have the connector between the red brick portion of the addition and the original building. The ridge line has been dropped more than 4 feet so that we tuck under the eave of the existing building. The floor elevations have been lowered, so the heads of doors and windows are now further distinguished from the original building. The window patterns on the facades have been altered to be more in keeping with the lessons learned on the original building. The chimney on the far left side has been shown as it was in the previous iteration to visually tie the addition to the original structure. 2 of the existing chimneys will need to be rebuilt for structural purposes, but will be rebuilt as exactly as they exist currently. Next slide, please. This upper elevation is the north elevation of the building, directly adjacent to our neighbor to the north. Shows the connector again, and it shows what might be considered the side elevation of the building. Again, we have done significant changes to the floor elevations, heights of roof, footprint, square footage of the building to have the mass be differentiated from the existing and perceived as significantly smaller than the existing building. The lower view, the west elevation, shows sort of the end view of the building. And when seen from this view, it's apparent the the scale of the addition when compared to the scale of the original building at the rear. The next slide, please. This upper drawing is similar to the rendered version we saw just previously a few slides back. It shows the new addition ghosted in, and in the foreground, the line work shows the existing building and the existing one-story additions out back, which we're planning to remove. One can get a sense of the scale of the addition as compared to the existing. Interestingly enough, the one-story addition that is presently located on the site covers more than 50% of the the west wall of the existing historic building. The proposed addition will cover less than 25% of the original facade. Next slide, please. This overlay drawing is similar elevation, but what you're seeing here is a line work drawing indicating where the previous application for the project proposed the building, and the ghosted in color version is what we're proposing today. You can see the reduction in footprint, in the change in planes in the facade, the change in roofline height, both at the connector and at the main body of the building, the reduction in mass. We no longer are matching eave lines. We have an addition that is now more differentiated from the original building. We're not showing the building as a single architectural whole, but rather as a complementary and differentiated piece. And I'll return the discussion to Lisa.
I think that, Mr. Chair, we will, I'm getting a feedback. That's why I stopped. I apologize. With that, we will turn it over to the commission for comments and questions.
Okay, thank you, Attorney Mead. I think I am let me turn to my fellow conspirators here. Anyone have a question or anything they'd like to clarify from what's been presented? Mr. Sendron, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mark Sendron. I certainly am quite impressed by the redesign of the proposed addition, but I do have a question. Is that chimney on the north side of the addition a functional chimney?
No, it is not.
So that explains why the windows on the back side are essentially not symmetrically oriented?
That's correct. And I think an area of study moving forward, that would be slide 12 that Mr. Sendron is referring to. We're one of our goals is to try to have the windows in the second floor space be positioned in such a way that we can allow the masonry above and the masonry below to be visually continuous. We're still working on that. There's some internal plans that affect that. I think for the purpose of this presentation, where I believe the exterior is king for a meeting of this nature, we wanted to make sure that it was understood that it is our intention that the chimney is centered on that facade, and we will attempt to work to have the windows on that facade be more harmonious with that chimney moving forward. It is not a functional chimney, however.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. Does that answer your question, Mark?
It does, thank you, yes.
Yeah, but let me follow up on Mark's question. So does the masonry, I know from experience, is heavy. Does the support for that chimney necessarily go down through, or do you planning to accommodate that through other support means?
Well, as we would not have structure that would be expressed internally or externally, let's say. So we would accomplish that through the internal structure of the building. But as a visual response to you, we would like to have the flexibility to be able to have the window locations on the second floor be a subject of further study for us. I don't believe that we're going to be able to center the chimney on those windows without having the chimney be off center in the massing, which we think would be a visual loss for the design. So it's more of an internal workings issue, and we are hopeful that we can have the masonry align. I think in that case, the structure will be simplified from what you're suggesting, from what it might currently be.
And I'm sorry if I missed this in your presentation. What's driving the asymmetrical positioning of the second floor windows in the first place?
It's internal division of spaces within the mass. There's a large bedroom towards the west side of the building, and it favors Rusher Street rather than the rear yard. It's potential that it could be centered along that facade, but in all honesty, that is going to take some architectural gymnastics on the interior that we are still working through.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that. And we'll maybe we'll discuss this further in deliberations as to whether it might be better to, have a chimney there at all. I see Commissioner Pecknick has a hand raised. Go ahead, Patricia.
Yes, I have 3 questions. The first one is, does the 1,511 square feet of living space that's stated for the addition include the living space that's being added by the connector?
Arnie, can you answer that calculation question?
The connector, I have to check my notes here for a second to see where we finished with that. The previous iteration showed the 17. Oh, that's on that first slide. I don't have the number in front of me.
So the previous amount was 1,758 square feet for the amount of floor area being added to the building. And now that's been reduced to 1,511 square feet.
1,511, that's right. So that's inclusive.
So that includes the space. I know the connector divides space between space for the first part of the 2-family and the second part of the 2-family. Okay. So
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did want to clarify that the connector is not subdivided 1 unit above, 1 unit below. The connector itself on the first floor is split in half. It's shared by the existing building and the new addition on the first floor. On the second floor, it's entirely occupied by the second unit. So it's not a clear division of units vertically through that entire connector.
okay, thank you for clarifying that. And the second part of that question is, so if I'm calculating the total square footage of the historic house and the connector and the addition, I'm getting it as approaching or at or just over 5,000 square feet. What is the correct number? So I believe the historic house was with the 2 small additions that will be demoed was 3,567. So I feel like it's close to 5,000 for the historic house plus connector plus addition. I just want to make sure I get it right.
I don't know that I have those numbers right off.
Okay. Can I ask
Go ahead.
the other question then? Does the connector have a metal roof? Are these metal roofs or is it a railing and they're decks? I can't read what the.
Those are standing seam metal roofs.
Oh, they are metal roofs. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And I think that, Patricia, to your question about square footage, if that if that 35 and some odd square foot for the original structure included the addition, as you recall, that that existing addition is being demoed, so some of that square footage obviously would come down. So yeah, it would be interesting to know what the total square footage is now, because of it, you know what I mean? Because the anyway, I'm trying to think. Did I have any questions? I believe it was Attorney Mead mentioned the brick. It might have been in, I'm not sure if it was verbally here or in the memo, that they're considering, you know, paint versus natural brick color. I think that as these renderings show, and by the way, my compliments on those several renderings you provided, the 3D renderings, those were very helpful to help us visualize this. Anyway, it's my opinion that by leaving them natural, it does help differentiate, you know, that new addition from the existing historical structure. And the connector is interesting. I think what you've done is probably a reasonably good solution to, you know, the given problem. And what's most interesting is it now, at a quick glance, it almost reads as if there are two separate structures on the lot. But yet the connector is substantial enough that it doesn't seem like a, you know, a zoning law cheat or something like that. It you know, if you look at it more closely, it reads, you know, like it makes sense. So I think you've done a reasonably good job there. I didn't have any other questions. So before we move to official deliberations, given that there was a number of public comment and initially, and this is a substantial change to the plans, I will permit a brief public comment period if there are members of the public that would like to comment on these revised plans. I know there was a lot of interest from neighbors and abutters, so we'll have a brief public comment period, which I'll open now. But before we recognize the first person, please remember that as the Historical Commission, our purview is things that mainly is the what's being proposed appropriate to the setting and the existing historical structure? Does it detract from the historical value in some way? We do not, the Zoning Board of Appeals would address issues like sight lines, you know, sunlight and shade and ventilation and lot lines and all that kind of thing. So, but if you have a question or excuse me, a comment about the design, we would welcome those now. So I've opened the period and I see one hand up. Looks like Mr. Colgejon. So would you go ahead and unmute yourself, Tom, and you can speak?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. Tom Colgejon, 64 Federal Street, co-president of the Newburyport Preservation Trust. This plan is a substantial improvement over the original plan. The trust especially likes removal of the rear addition from the roof of the main historic house and the sinking of the rear addition so that it does not compete so much with the height of the historic building. Those are two very positive improvements. Having said that, there is a ways to go yet to make this a much better project. The trust founder and architect, Linda Miller, and I met with the developer to go over possible plans. Linda Miller had some positive suggestions. Mainly, she suggested simplifying the rear addition. There are too many wings or projections, if you would call it, on the addition. So facing the addition from Russia Street, if the projection or wing to the far left containing the bay window were eliminated, it would reduce both the large size and improve the visual aspect. If the addition needed to grow a little, it would make up for some of the lost space. But it's the idea of eliminating that projection to the left and that bay window. Linda Miller also thought the entrance between the structures, as you view it from Russia Street, needed a little further in delineation or enhancement, a little bit of enhancement, so people would know where the actual entrance was. It's fairly de minimis now, I guess would be the one way to describe it. It does not matter to the trust whether or not the addition is in brick or clapboards, although the bricks do look nice, I have to admit. Either would be a clear delineation between the old and the new. The brick seemed to enable the developer to help sink the rear addition, and if that is the case, we are all for it. Just a note, there seems to be considerable neighborhood concern about the parking options, especially on Russia Street. I know that is not the purview of the NHC, but I thought I would just make a note of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Goldachon. You can lower your hand if you're finished. Good. I also see a couple other hands raised. I'll just take them in the order I see them. Amy Badger, can you unmute yourself so we can hear you?
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'm Amy Badger, a 31-year resident of 21 Olive Street. And I thank the committee for your commitment to the respect for the historical significance of this house, the street, and this neighborhood. While this revised plan is aesthetically a little bit better, I believe we're still talking about a bigger issue, which is this particular home and how it sits on the street and what impact it has in the overall neighborhood. This property does not exist in a vacuum. The green space, I know this is not in your purview, is a luxury, and it is a dozen families on Olive, Merrill, and Russia benefit from this yard. The issues that a lot of us are raising is the density. And with each home come lots of cars. We have regular people people who live on this street that have 3, 4, and 5 cars. So even with these curb cuts and parking spaces that are proposed, bringing 4 or 5 more cars into this area is kind of hard to fathom. The house itself is deemed as a 2-family and nearly 4,000 square feet. So without adding a thing, it could be split into 2 families and still be in scale without any, without any modification with the other homes in this neighborhood. There are plenty of homes in this neighborhood that are 1,500 square feet. I don't understand why, if this house is actually deemed a 2-family, why it's not divided into 2 families, but a whole separate building is being added. And when I asked the developer that specifically, he said he couldn't do it because it was too expensive, which is clearly that he won't make enough money on this project. As a neighborhood, I don't feel as though we should absorb the parking woes, the impacted light and air, and the increased density so that this developer can make the most money on this project. There are several people, many people I'm sure, but several people I know personally that would love to honor and cherish this house as it is and seek to restore it and not develop it. The backyard is the envy of most Newburyport residents, and so it should be treasured, not filled in. I maintain that developments are meant for open land. This is not open land. This is a backyard in a historic neighborhood. Let's work within the dimensions of the present house to create a home or 2 smaller homes that are in keeping with the scale of this neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And don't forget to put your hand down, Amy. Thank you. Next, I see someone only identified by the letters J-E-R. If that's you, and Caitlin, if you can enable their audio, and that person will also need to, where'd they go? Oh, yeah, they're still there. Oh, their hand went down. Okay. How about Elizabeth Hallett? Okay, we've enabled your audio, so if you unmute yourself, we should be able to hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, my name is Elizabeth Hallett, 23 Olive Street. I am a neighbor to Amy Badger, who spoke previously, and I could not agree more with everything that Amy just stated. Our home faces the south facade, so the visual impact of this addition, is not visible from our home here, but everything to do with the atmosphere of the neighborhood, the historicity of the home itself, the fact that it is, has been a two-family, is all very, very valid points. They're really, it would really be a detriment to many of us in this area to infill this lovely open space of a yard here. As far as the renderings of the addition itself, I do agree with Tom and Linda of the Newburyport Preservation Trust. This is somewhat of an improvement if in fact there must be an addition. However, that bay window facing Russia Street is hideous. It does not go with the rest of the house. The windows on the far side, the north elevation, should in fact reflect the original home as well and be symmetrical. When this addition was first proposed, it was suggested by the developer who spoke with many of us in the neighborhood that this would look like an addition to a home, of which there are countless numbers in this city. This connector that is has been placed in between the new addition and the original home is also a hideous addition, I believe. It does not look like the original home was added onto, but rather, I don't know even how to describe it, some sort of afterthought connected by this, I don't know, connector. At any rate, those are my comments and I thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'll recognize Carol Zampronia. You're muted locally, so if you want to speak, Carol, you will need to unmute yourself locally at your end. If that can't be worked out, we can move on. We still have actually now twice someone identified only by JER. If that's you with your hand raised, oh, hand went down again.
Unmute.
Okay. Oh, there you go. Can you identify yourself and name and address and make your comment?
I am Carol Hello, Gerald's wife, and I'm at a butter at 26 Olive Street.
Excuse me, sorry, this is Andy Port. Just for the communication benefit of everybody involved, if you have a second device in the room, if you could mute that one, it'll prevent the echo.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, let's try it again. You're very low. Can you, whatever device is active for audio, make sure you're close to it because it sounds like you're across the room.
I'm muted.
I'm Carol Hello at 26 Olive Street. And butter 22, 24 Olive Street. I'm sorry, I'm hearing myself, so I'm sure you all. I can appreciate the integrity of the revised plan.
Sorry, it's
yeah.
Just to clarify, it is still hard to hear what you're saying. I'm not sure if the second device has been muted, but we also are having difficulty hearing you now.
The second device has been muted.
Now, whoever just spoke, Jerome or whatever, your audio is loud and clear. Can she use that device?
Okay.
Speak into?
Oh, I gotta mute the first one.
Okay. And Ms. Hallett, your hand is still up. If you're finished, you can put your hand down. I believe you spoke earlier. Thank you.
Okay.
Much better. A little muffled, but
Okay. I'm Carol Lowe, Gerald's wife, and I'm at 26 Olive Street and a butter to 2024 Olive Street.
okay.
And I do appreciate the integrity of the original structure being preserved. However, and this might be a zoning issue, but I do have issues with the addition and the impact it's having on Russia Street, particularly with parking and backing out into a narrow street. I realize people buy property to live in them, to make them their home, and other people like developers do it to make money. So I would like to see this resolved. And I think the mudroom pass-through was just like a loophole to kind of be able to keep this structure a two-family. And I preferred it when it was split side by side rather than front to back. I know the kitchens were lopped off to make room for this addition, as well as a lot of green space was eliminated. And I would just, I don't know, I'm not opposed to change, but I just think this is the wrong direction. And I know the density to the neighborhood has already been addressed, but it is a concern. It does change the makeup of where we live.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you think I should be bringing up some of these issues at the zoning board, I will, but it's, we had one parking space that's now grown into 4 on the Russia Street side, and then Olive Street has 1 that could be tandem and be made into 2. So those are my thoughts on it. And I know the demolition of the outbuildings and the yard has been sacrificed for this new addition, and I just wish there was a way to work around that. And now I've said my piece, so you can take it for what it's worth.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Carol. And you may put your hand down. I appreciate your comments. I believe there's a couple more hands up. The one that's JER, I assume that's the same part that was just speaking. But if so, you can put the hand down. If it's not, leave it up and we'll recognize it. In the meantime, I'm going to go to Mr. Ned Mcgrath, a name familiar to some of us in the commission. Ned, do you want to unmute yourself and make a comment? We're not hearing anything. Are you? Looks like we've unmuted you on this end. Mr. Mcgrath, are you able to unmute yourself on your side?
And Ned, if you are having any issues, since we can't hear you, there is a call-in number you could try as well on the website.
Looks like you briefly unmuted and then muted again from what I saw on the Zoom display. Yep. Now it looks like you're unmuted. Try speaking, Ned. Not hearing anything. I'm sorry, Mr. Mcgrath. All right. Carol, your hand is still up. If you're, since you've already been recognized, I assume you're done. So if you can lower your hand, that would be great. Mr. Mcgrath, your hand is also still up, but we're having that technical problem where we don't hear you at all. So not sure what we can do about that. You want to give it one more try? If not, we'll have to, I think we'll just have to move on because we do have a rather full agenda, so we've got to go on. Let me tell you what, there is a new hand up, oh, there was, but it's gone down. Things are jumping around. Okay. All right, well, I think I'm gonna have to close, one last try. Ned, you are audio enabled on our side. Do you want to see if you can enable your audio and say something? Looks like whatever's going on, your audio isn't working. I'm very sorry about that because we would have liked to have heard your comments. For those of you unfamiliar, Ned Mcgrath is a former member of the Historical Commission. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to close the public comment period because we do need to move on. So I will formally close that. And I will go to my fellow commissioners here. And I think we'll do the same procedure we've been doing. I'll go to my fellow commissioners pretty much in order they're showing up here. Looks like now I've got, let's see, Joe Morgan, you're still the first one that I come to on my display here. Did you have any thoughts or comments on this?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to, as you did, congratulate the architect. I think they've done a very good job in their presentation. The renderings are very clear. The perspectives and the roof perspective, I think, was very helpful to see some of the hardscape and some of the boundary conditions around the house. It really helps to tell this story, regardless of what you think about the design itself. The presentation, I think, is excellent. I don't have really any comments on the design of the addition, since, in my opinion, the light touch approach to the connector was so well handled, I think, to respect the integrity of the original structure. I think that it really freed up the designer to do a lot more with the addition. And of course, we know that the standards don't require a contextualist, historicist approach. They could have actually done something more contemporary or modern as long as it was subordinate and sympathetic with the original structure. They've chosen to do something more contextual. That's their prerogative, but I think it's a good solution, and I have no further comments. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Joe. Let's see, who else have we got here? Looks like, hang on, Mark Sandrone, thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have any further comments except for my objection to the way the windows are set up on the backside.
Okay, yeah, by the whole chimney window thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, hang on a second. Making some notes here. Okay, thank you, Mark. Peter McNamee, any thoughts?
My comments would be largely the same as Joe Morgan's, although I would add that I share the feelings of some of the neighbors who spoke regarding the bay window. That sort of stands out as a sore thumb to me. Everything else, I really don't have any issues with.
Okay, thank you very much. Malcolm Carnwath, what are your thoughts?
I was wondering why about the windows on the north side of the addition, the second building.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if they could be more symmetrical like the main house.
Right.
I was just, I think our purview is kind of the exterior.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah, and that's what Mark was also talking about, Malcolm. And we had some discussion about that in the relationship between the chimney, which is sort of a, for lack of a better term, false chimney, and those windows. Obviously, the way it's looking, pardon me, looking at this elevation, the lower part of the page that Caitlin is displaying right now, it's like an impossible, it's something that would never exist in reality, because you wouldn't have the logical assumption is that the masonry of the chimney continues downward through the house, but there's a window in the way, so obviously that can't possibly work. So it's one of those things that, a head scratcher for a passerby, like what's going on there. So, and I think the architect realizes that and has talked about how they're kind of trying to work through that particular issue.
I think, Mr. Chair,
yeah.
I just want to clarify.
Yes.
It's my understanding that, and because I want to be able to address these issues,
Yep.
it's my understanding that Malcolm was talking about the upper elevation, which is the north elevation. Is that correct, Malcolm?
Yeah, the top half of this drawing on the addition, the windows. I was just wondering why they're not symmetrical, and I was wondering if the doors on the in between part. One thing I was thinking that maybe what if they were solid doors and they had side lights?
Mm-hmm. Perhaps you can, Ernie, can you address any of those items?
Sure. There were comments both by Malcolm and by, I'm trying to look through my notes here about the connector. There's a very thin line that you walk when you celebrate I believe it was Mr. Coulter, John. There's a very thin line that you walk when you make a bigger deal out of the connector piece than what we've done. I think our mission has always been to have the original building, the historic building, be the showpiece and be the place where your eye focuses. And we want the connector to be distinguished from the existing building, but we don't want to play up the connector so much that it becomes the focus of your attention. We wanted simplicity and we wanted elegance. We wanted something that picks up on some of the lessons from the original building without being the showpiece. And I think Mr. Coulter, John, in an earlier comment said something about, perhaps making a bigger deal out of the entrance on Rusher Street, and that's enhancing it more, delineating it more, and that actually runs counter to what our mission was for the connector. We wanted the connector to be a subtle and respectful connector, and adding things like side lights or more visual attention to the connector, in our opinion, detracts from the existing building that we're immediately adjacent to. I could imagine that sort of thing happening more on the body of the brick, the red brick portion of the addition, but not so much at the connector. We're trying for the connector to be differentiated but quiet. And, and that, even changing the materials there to a metal roof, that's a little bit of a bold step, but we thought necessary to really create that distinction between the old and the new. But we would refrain, our instincts are saying that we've taken it as far as we really would prefer to at the connector.
Mm-hmm. And as far as the fenestration on that side, I'm assuming that was driven by interior design considerations.
Yes, and I think it's, there are absolutely sides and faces to the building. There are two front faces to this project, and then there are actually if you think about the rear wall of the existing building right now, the window treatment is less formal than it is on other parts of the building. And I think that's a common characteristic of older buildings, that fenestration is not necessarily treated the same way on every facade. There is an absolute preference being given to the relationship of the building to the street. We understand that there is almost a civic presence to this building, and believe that the fenestration along Russia Street, having that pick up on that more formal look, is important to that street. Whereas it may not be the same expectation on what is essentially either a backyard or a side yard. There are elements of the building that are contributing to the windows being smaller on this side of the building. That's just a feature of what we believe is a very efficient but footprint for the building. We really are, the length of that facade to the left of the new French doors is 20 feet. So, there's a 20-foot facade where those 4 windows appear. It's actually fairly modest, and getting large windows where we have kitchens or bathrooms or that sort of thing, they have to be somewhere in the footprint. We've had the more, let's say, public rooms, living rooms and bedrooms and so forth, oriented more towards the street, and the more service-oriented rooms oriented towards the backyard or side yard. And the windows reflect that. And that's common in older buildings. You see some funkiness in older structures that treat street walls and side walls or rear walls very differently.
Yeah, and I would point out that on the top half of this illustration, it looks very like it's not quite in your face, but looks very evident as far as that rear section. But if you look at the lower half, you see that due to the fairly significant setback from that side, and the fact that that's quite a bit further back on the lot, and there's a house next door and so on and so forth, it's not going to be particularly visible.
Right. I think slide 10 really illustrates that the best. I think if we're nearly 30 feet from the lot line with a large portion of the addition, and we're even further back to that recess furthest to the left. So there's a substantial amount of open space between the addition and any of the lot lines, where in fact our shortest dimension to any lot line is more than 26 feet, and the other 2 dimensions are 29 feet plus. So there's a substantial setback to any of the facades, and I doubt very strongly that the facade facing towards the north will be seen by virtually anyone who is on the street.
Thank you, Ernie. I usually aren't so informal, but the only reference after your name is just Ernie. But so thank you.
That's totally fine.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I didn't mean to cut you off, Malcolm. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, it does. I was wondering the spacing on the windows on the Merrimack River side of the addition. I was just wondering, they're kind of like one's above the other, and one's kind of off to the side. And I was just curious about why they weren't spaced evenly and symmetrically.
Yeah, and then, well, that's what I think that's what we just discussed, right?
As I mentioned, there is some reworking of the floor plans that is something that we're studying to see if we can have the windows have a more direct relationship to each other on that facade. We didn't get to a place yet where we felt comfort showing that, but we believe that's an area that we can improve upon. And so I think if that were the most challenging problem that we face, I think we would be optimistic. I think that's something that we believe we can solve architecturally.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the connector has, I wanted to compliment you on the roof on the connector. I think that that's a good job. Frankly, I was thinking of coming into this meeting and not liking anything I saw, but I've changed a lot during the course of this meeting. So thank you.
We appreciate the kind remarks.
All right. Thank you, Malcolm. So I think we haven't heard from Patricia Pecknick. Do you have any thoughts, Patricia? Questions,
Yes,
comments?
yes. I'm just looking at the standards
Mhm.
that speak to, limiting the size and scale of addition in relationship to the historic building. And I'm recognizing that the proposed addition has been limited relative to the previous proposal, but I'm comparing the existing to the proposed, not so much this proposal to prior proposals. And I feel the addition should be a little more limited in relation to the historic building. It does read as a second house, not as an addition. I think the 8-foot 6-inch first floor ceiling heights seem excessive. Chair Richard, you mentioned that it looks like two separate buildings. So with the connector, it does look to me like conjoined masses rather than an integral whole. That's something in our zoning language, but so I looked to the standards and what the standards would say about a connector, and the standards recommend a connector that is not only recessed, but lower in height than either building. So under zoning, I know the connector has to be at least as high as the eave lines of the lowest dwelling unit. It seems to meet the eave line of the historic house. So for me, the connector is still a problem because it should be lower, but also the addition should be lower. The metal roofs are a big ouch to the historic house. It also, I mean, it's awful for an historic house. It's terrible. But over the doorways also means the ice and snow crashes down on you quickly when you go outdoors during the snow melt. So I understood the architect wanted bold, but that might be a little too bold for an occupant. And then listening to some of the people in the neighborhood, a valuable preservation outcome, I think, for the neighborhood would also comport with the standards warning against constructing an addition that results in the loss of the historic character of not only the resource, but its location and setting. And this much house has quite an impact on the setting, expanding it to 5,000 square feet. I don't think a house with that much, that large an addition that reads as a separate house can really happen there without impacting the setting. So I actually don't support it in the current form.
Mhm.
That's all I have to say.
Okay. I think I got everybody except myself. I made so, but notwithstanding my earlier comments, which still hold, actually what I said about the connector was at first glance, it reads as two separate structures, but then your eye picks up the connector, and I think what I said was something to the effect of it. What they've kind of figured out a kind of a compromise between something that was too obvious versus something that was so skimpy as to look like a zoning ordinance cheat or something like that, where someone does a breezeway or something like that. So so they haven't, and I appreciate the Ernie explaining about the wanting to de-emphasize the connector so that the historical property is the star of the show. Okay, well, so I'm left feeling that the consensus I'm hearing is that most people feel that this is an improvement. A couple of members are still a little hesitant about the overall size. I think the main concerns, though, I heard really were that as far as fixing was obviously in that west elevation, that's the lower half of the slide we're looking at right now, doing something about the coordination between the fenestration on the second floor and the masonry, the chimney. I think you should even consider, whether or not it's really necessary to have a chimney there. I don't know if it's non-functional, but that's kind of a design decision. It's trying to think what this reflecting on what the standards would say about something like that, it seems, I don't know, it just seems like a little bit artificial. And there was also some concern about that. It's not quite a bay window. I'm not sure how to refer to it, that white window on the Russia Street facade. Yeah, you can see it on yeah, slide 11. Thank you, Caitlin. It kind of draws a lot of attention to itself, and perhaps, you know, from your point of view, but the architect's point of view, you wanted to add a little more interest there or something. But I think it's a subject of debate as to whether it's a little bit too much attention in that. My feeling is not so much that it's more it seems almost like it's a different stylistic period than the rest of the fenestration, because you've got, you know, windows on that addition that are consistent with you know, a more or less period style. Looks like they're 6/6, which was a slightly later period, you know, which is well, it's consistent with the I forget what the age of this house is, but certainly consistent with what appears to be kind of a general federal period or thereabouts, turn of that century appearance. But then you've got that window almost looks like it's something from a much later period. You know, like something in the you know, second half of the 19th century. So it's a bit, you know, that to me is a bit jarring. Other than that, you know, I think that some of the concerns of the abutters, I wouldn't say they're invalid. They certainly have, many of them have merits. I think some of them are the purview for the zoning board in terms of things like parking constraints and so on. Given I think you can see from, like, if Caitlin, if you go to slide 10, I think you can see from, you know, that rendering that there's quite a bit of open space still there, considering Newburyport lots, not only on the Olive Street neighborhood, but all along that neighborhood. You know, I myself am only a couple blocks over. I know that all these lots tend to be rather small. There's just a few exceptional lots that have this size, and I totally get it that there's a big lot, they want to take advantage of it, and technically, yeah, it's quote infill unquote. Given that, I think it's you know, they seem to be, they meaning the applicant, the architect, and so on, seem to be working pretty diligently to design something that will you know, satisfy a human need for habitation in a bit of available space in a desirable area, without, you know, really having a significant detrimental impact on the existing historic structure and so on. So those are my thoughts. Given all that, it sounds like I heard not sure if I heard it from Attorney Mead, but I did hear it from Ernie that you're still working on a few details. So do you guys want to come back with you know, any further, you know, refinement, especially of that north elevation, and, you know, possibly any other, you know, rethinking around some of the other comments you've heard tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that that's probably a good idea. So what I have is the windows on the north elevation related to the chimney, and take a look at the ones on the inside west elevation as well. And actually, it's the west elevation that's in relation to the chimney, and then the north elevation, which is the side yard. Right. And then re-examine the bay window, perhaps. So that's what we will go do and finalize it, so the commission has a final plan that they can act upon. And so we would request a continuance to the October 14th meeting. And if I missed anything, that would be, you could let me know, but I think those are the main items.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Attorney Mead. Is there a motion to continue this matter? Well, actually, it's not really a continuation, but it's well, we'll do that anyway, just to make it official. I think technically it's not like it's an open hearing or something like that. But we'll go ahead and suggest a motion to continue this to the October 14th meeting. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Okay, that was Malcolm. Thank you. Is there a second?
Mark Sento, and I second.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We have MC and then MC. Okay, we'll go through the roll call. Malcolm Conwath.
Yes.
Okay, Mark Syndrome.
Yes.
Thank you. Peter McNamee.
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Thank you. Patricia Pecknick.
Yes.
Okay, and the chair is yes. And before they leave altogether, in addition to the things that Attorney Mead called out, does anyone think of, was there anything that you'd like to recommend that they reconsider as they're, finalizing their plans that was not already mentioned? And I'm not hearing anything. Okay, good. Okay, well, very good. And thank you very much for coming in and your work on this. It's showing progress, and hopefully we can continue to move towards an acceptable solution.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the last major item here, which is 30 Winter Street. This is a very similar situation as the one we were just doing on Olive Street, where it's under a demo delay, and the applicant actually, which is Mr. Primack, I forget which one it is, came back earlier, but there were some deficiencies in the plans, but I believe he has newer plans to present, which we've had a chance to take a look at. So first off, I'll invite Mr. Primack if he's here. Let's see, is he here? Yes, he is here. And we've enabled your audio, Mr. Primack. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Primack.
Primack. Okay, thank you, Mr. Primack. Anything you'd like to say about your updated plans in particular? Seems like they're mostly a question of adding some things that we asked for last time, but anything else you'd like to say?
No, pretty much what you said. You guys had asked me to come and show you some of the interior elevations as to why I wanted to increase the back as such, and then I think the last thing was a discussion about the windows, whether it was a possibility of preserving the windows, doing anything to the windows. So I took quite a few pictures of the windows. Actually had somebody come in the house who is a somewhat of a window specialist, and told me that the windows were not actually original. They seem to think there was one window up in the third floor attic that might be still original, and that the windows were actually reproductions, probably made in the 80s or the 90s. They said that the reproductive quality, seemed to have been pretty good, but like the rest of the house, they were poorly maintained. They were never painted. There was no putty applied. There was no repairing, and obviously broken panes. There were no storms put in, which would have helped. And instead, as you'll see from the pictures, and those of you who went inside the house, I'm not sure if you remember, but they have these plastic barriers, plexiglass barriers on the inside, which were probably put there to prevent drafts, but in reality, they really added to the neglect of the windows, because they formed a humidity barrier, so to speak. The rails are rotten, the muttons are all rotten, and the sills, and just it really, I'd say 80% of them are beyond repair. And I took a number of photos, which are at the bottom of this presentation that you can see. So if you want to go through the slides on just some of the elevations, and I can point that out, or did you want to chat first?
Yeah, well, let's go through this, because there's a few things that might come up as questions. Caitlin, why don't you go back on the presentation, and can I ask you who the specialist was, the window specialist was?
She's out of Amesbury. I'm trying to remember. Allison, something or other. I can't remember her name.
Sounds like the so-called, sounds like the woman who runs the Window Woman organization. I think her name is Allison, isn't it? Anyway.
Yeah, it might have been her. Somebody gave me her. One of my contractors gave me her number. Told me, they're like, you should try this woman in Amesbury. She knows windows.
Yeah, sounds like her. Okay, thank you for that, Eric. Yeah, let's take a look at this. So we're on page 3 of your presentation. You should see it on your screen there. Just want to take a look. because, and as we're going through this, for my colleagues here, if you spot something that you'd like clarification on, maybe we can go through it quickly this way. You know, we can cover it as we go through.
Some reason this doesn't look in, like I'm in order here.
No, this isn't page 3 of
It
your
is page,
presentation. Yeah.
it is, that isn't quite how it was, I don't believe how it was sent, but it might, maybe some of the order got mixed up. Because that's proposed, that's a proposed rear when I'm trying to show you guys the, yeah. See, we had an issue with this because the PowerPoint was too big and I had to send it in a PDF instead. So I have this, you know, as yeah, page 10, I have the memo, you have the drawings. Yeah, I don't have it. It doesn't, this doesn't look as the same. I don't want to say the same as I submitted, but it doesn't look like it's in the same order. So why don't we go back, go look at what you have, and yeah, slide 3. You know, that's proposed rear elevation. Go. Are
you looking at the video that's in the Zoom meeting, Eric?
Oh, so you're. Hang on a second.
Oh, sure.
All right, sorry. Now I'm looking at yours. I am looking at yours. Okay.
Okay. So hopefully this is the right.
Yes, we're on the
right
same
file.
page. We're on the same page.
Great. Okay, so just
so I added a few things in here just about each side. Front facing section will remain, being replaced with the energy efficient simulated divided light window along with 3D exterior grates, which I think some of you had asked for. So not only will they have the grates in between the glass, but they will have the exterior grates as well. So the front has 12/12 and 12/8 windows. The door openings will remain the same, as I said before, and all the trim will be repaired or replaced that matches the existing. The rear facing windows, rear facing section has windows that are 9/6 and 6/6, same thing, SDL with exterior grates, matching trim to be replaced. The right and left side have 12/12, 12/8, and 6/6. And again, same thing. I'm going to use the SDL windows with the exterior grates. And I also put in there's a window spec in here of one of the what I would use. I think it's maybe it might be after all the pictures. It might be near the bottom of the presentation. I'm not positive, but you can look at that as to the particular window that I would be using.
Okay.
I think you guys had asked to say, like, okay, what if you are gonna, proposing to change the windows, what would you be using? So those would be good. And they're a local Maine company that makes them.
Okay. Yeah, I think they're just near the end. So Caitlin, we can probably skip over, well, just a real quick look at the plot plan. That was let's go back up that first one. Yeah. Okay. So the footprint isn't changing. Is that correct, Mr. Preman?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So then there's really nothing much to see there. And then we've got, the Form B and so on, which we've all been looking at. So we can jump down. What's on page, is 9 still like assessor's information, that sort of thing?
Correct.
We still there? It's okay. And then what's page 10, Caitlin? What's on that?
I think that's
just the zoning. Yeah, that's just the determination. Okay. And 11?
11 should be the existing front elevation.
Yes, it is. And,
okay. So not doing anything to the front, which again, I think is the most important. Not changing the street view, not changing the character of the neighborhood, anything. It's going to look exactly the same, better, keeping all the windows, keeping all the trim, keeping all the setbacks, everything that was there, the 2 chimneys at the top.
So the window size will be exactly the same. You don't have to change the openings at all?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. So there'll be 12/8 on the second floor and 12/12 on the first floor.
Okay. So it looked the same except not dilapidated.
Correct, correct,
Okay.
correct.
Slide 12. This is, okay, it's proposed front elevation, which is essentially the same, only you've provided some information there, which I think you've spoken to. I just
Right.
want to move along fairly expeditiously here.
Yep.
13 is, okay, front demo plan, which is like essentially none. Okay, 14. Existing real. Now, could you explain, you've given us measurements here with red lines and some dimensions. What exactly do those represent?
So that represents the floor height inside.
Okay, so the
as I said,
horizontal
you-
line is the interior floor?
Correct. So you have your bottom is, there's 2 feet above grade from the bottom. Then it's got 84 inches. This is in the back. So you've got
Right.
84 inches, which is just, 7 feet, right? And then the back section is, I know I'm having a hard time looking, seeing that. I think that's proposed.
The existing looks like 57 inches. I mean, I assume
57,
that's-
correct,
Yeah,
57. So that's that. And for those of you who went into the house, those were the small rooms in the back. So from that
Right.
back ridge, that's 57 inches. That's not even 5 feet tall.
Yeah.
At the back corner. So
yeah, I understand.
that is one of the main reasons why we want to raise that up a little bit.
Right.
Okay, so that's going across in the back.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
as you slide down, you can go to the next one. Okay, so there's a proposed rear elevation. So as I said, we're raising up the ridge, and as you can see that little cutout section near the gable, we're only raising up that ridge about 2 feet. So that's all we're going. Now we're obviously changing the slope of the roof, so we're raising the whole thing. But I know there was some mention about not wanting to hide that gable so much. We really are only taking up 2 more feet off of that gable. Okay, but it gives us now on the first floor, it gives us 101 inches, and it gives us 97 on the second. And once you see the side views, you'll realize, that's basically just to have a uniform floor height going across from front to back, from side to side.
All right, help me understand something here. The dashed lines that we're looking at, does the dashed lines represent what's the existing there, and the solid lines are the proposed? Do I read that right?
No. So they're just the dash lines going across of the floor heights. So when you see the proposed rear elevations, those dash lines are the proposed floor heights. And you just see the heights listed on there to the right.
Oh, okay. Look, well, it looks like that I guess there's 2 sets of dashed lines. Some are red, some are black. Because I see the upper one is.
That was the
labeled-
existing. That where you
Yes.
see the solid black line, that's the existing fascia. So that was still in there to show you where the existing, was lined. So that way you could see how much, you see where the top ridge is, and then you see where the new fascia is going to be. So
Okay.
the whole thing, the extension, I think is 6'5", what we're adding, which is from the existing fascia up to the new ridge. But
Mhm.
really going up from the gable, from the existing ridge, we're only going up 2 feet. Does that make sense?
Maybe.
Because the existing slope is much more pronounced, is a much
Right.
bigger angle.
Right.
And we're proposing, close to a flat roof in the back.
Okay, sounds like you're saying where you join up, where the roof of the addition joins the house is basically not changing. You're just changing the slope of the roof, so you have more height at the outside edge.
Which we're changing, we're going up 2 feet.
Oh, okay, 2 feet at where it
Right.
joins the house.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, phew. What's on slide 16?
Okay, so that's the demo for the back,
Right,
which was already presented.
right.
Okay.
And Okay, so it looks like in this side view, you've put in some red lines and dimensions that show the existing floor and heights and that sort of thing.
Right, so you can see, looking from the side, you can see in the front of the house, it's at, you know, the height in the first floor is 101 inches until you get to that back section. That back section is, you know, is only 84 inches, as was shown in the back. So as you can see, you're going into, you know, you're going into that back, it was kind of a kitchen, hubby, what do you call it? Pantry section that was only 84 inches in the back, the one that had the big fireplace sticking in the middle of it. Okay, so on the second floor, you see the existing height, the front of the house, 97 inches. As you go towards the back, and the right side and the left side are even slightly different. So as you go towards the back, the second room goes down to 93 inches. Then there's a two-step section that goes down that's only 67 inches at that peak, and goes down, and then goes down to the 57 inches. So again, that very small room.
Okay.
So when you go to the next slide, which is the proposed right side, you'll see where the ridge is. And you'll see now that we're making it so that it's proposed that it's 101 inches going all the way across from the front to the back into the kitchen. And it's 97 inches going from the front to the back into the second, on the second floor. So it's a nice, even, just, you know, no step down. Again, we're only raising that ridge, as you can see, just a couple of feet. We're changing the slope of the roof. I wish I could have superimposed the new over the old, but if you go back and forth, you can see it.
Oh, it looks like there's a dashed line there that's at a slope.
Yes, right. You can see it. Exactly. Exactly.
Now, Eric, why do the windows on this side in the addition look so much larger than the windows in the old house? Is that
well, the bottom one is the same. I believe the bottom one is the same, and I believe we were just we're replicating the bottom one up top.
I see.
Yeah, the 6/6.
So in the old house, the upper windows are smaller. Then there's the second floor windows in the old house are smaller than the downstairs. Okay.
Yes, correct. Yeah, it's got quite a few different windows. So so on the second floor rear, we're matching the second floor, the first floor rear.
Okay. Okay, but you're going to 6/6 instead of the, what is it, 12/12, whatever it is.
But that's it, like I said, that 6/6 already exists in the rear.
Yeah,
of the first
no,
floor.
I wasn't complaining.
So
I was just clarifying.
I get it.
Okay, what's on 19?
So again, the
Okay,
demo.
shows demo, okay.
Demo on that side.
And this is similar to the other one, but slightly
Correct.
showing
So
those
this one's
interior
even,
floors.
right, this one's even funkier. It's got two steps down on that second floor, because there was that second floor bathroom on the left side.
Right.
So it has a ridge. Has a again, 97 at the front, then it goes to 83, then it goes to 67, all the way down to 57.
Okay.
Okay.
So while we're on, so just to help me understand what you were saying before about the addition being up 2 feet higher where it meets the old house. So that red line with the 83 inches, that's the height there. Where so where that meets the gable roof at the top, so that's where you're going up 2 feet for your new roof to start going out?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, next slide.
Again, so the proposed left side is the same as the proposed right, with uniform heights throughout, from front to back. 101 inches, which is what we already have at the front of the house, going all the way to the back kitchen. 97 inches, which is at the front of the house, going all the way back to the second floor.
Okay. And next.
And then we're not changing, we're not doing anything up in the attic at all. Right. We're keeping that gable roof. Again, the only thing we're taking out is that chimney in the back.
Okay. Next.
And then the
Oh,
left
just the
side demo.
plan. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
And
And
we've
then I
got the
think-
photos, which we've pretty much seen.
You've seen, I think like I said, I added some more photos, which are the pictures of the windows.
The windows mainly, yeah.
Yes, yeah. So you can see there's one it's got the plastic grate, as you could see. You can slide through them easily, and there's some close-ups. It appears somebody has swiped some of the trim on me too.
Yeah.
That's just,
Well, when we did the walkthrough, we noticed some of that interior trim was missing.
Yeah. As you can see, so I took some of these close-up pictures, and you can see the sills are busted, rotten. It just
interesting.
Missing panes.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Well, interesting. If they were reproductions, that might, well, she thought they were only about maybe 30, 40 years old, reproductions.
Yeah, maybe not even. He was like, these could have been the 90s, could have been any.
Really?
She really couldn't even tell because they were in such bad shape. But she said they're definitely not original windows.
Interesting.
Yeah. That was the weird thing, is that she saw the inside of the house. She goes, I don't doubt that in the shape of the rest of the place that they didn't take care of the windows, but it's just odd that they actually put in windows.
Okay. All right. I think the last thing they want to take a look. If I think 51 is okay, so this is the window specs. So help us out here. Are these basically solid vinyl or what?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else? Is there anything else, Caitlin? Any more slides to go on this? Oh,
I think
okay.
that's it.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So let me ask my colleagues if I've been kind of asking questions that have been going through, so I'm pretty well set, but let me see if my colleagues had anything that they'd like to clarify or questions they'd like to ask. Anybody? Going once, going twice. Okay. Well, this is another one that is, since, well, there hasn't been much significant change to the original plan other than providing more details. So I'm not sure it's necessary to have another public comment period. We did have one earlier, so we did hear from a number of folks about this plan. So let me turn to my colleagues. Let's see who's first up at this point. Well, it looks like, Joe, the order is still having you right next to me here. So, Mr. Morgan, any thoughts?
Well, I know I don't have anything else to say other than I could not support the proposed changes as long as the gable to the rear is not protected. It's I don't see any really change in the design relative to that. It's as far as I'm concerned, it's part of the original structure. It's a historically significant feature, and it should not further obscured. So that's just until that's changed, this project has a no vote for me.
Okay.
Also, as long as since all of that rear portion of the house is being reframed, floors and roof, I'm going to have to insist that we get a stamped structural engineering existing conditions report. Otherwise, that's a big no for me. So that's all I got to say.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
Thank
you. Mark Sandrone, your thoughts?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you now.
Yep. I have to agree with Joe. No further comment.
Okay, thank you. Malcolm, your thoughts?
I don't really have anything. I don't have anything to add. I'm kind of, I know the house is tremendously run down and I live in the neighborhood. I'd like to see it repaired. So, and I don't necessarily have any objections with this plan.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm. How about Peter? How about you?
My comments would be the same as Joe's and Mark's. I was not originally too terribly put off by burying that gable, but it's sort of festered with me since then. So.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, thank you. And just to interject, I think Mr. Morgan raised a good point that I was convinced from what I saw in the walkthrough that little L, which quite often is a later addition, I think it was built pretty much contemporaneously with the main house, or either at the same time or really close to it. So I think it's a valid point to consider that an historic architectural feature worthy of preservation. Okay, Ms. Pecknick.
Yes, I'll start with the windows because they're the easiest thing, I guess, for me to talk about. I appreciate that Mr. Premack consulted with Allison Hardy. That's fantastic. The standards, as well as our city's guidelines, would require the use of wood replacement windows on the front elevation, in keeping with, the requirements that City Council adopted here in 2019. So the flat sort of grills between the glass with the applied mutton bar, that might not be subject to such exacting scrutiny under the standards for side and rear, although I really don't know the mutton bar dimensions on that. They haven't been included. I don't know what the profile looks like, but I think the public deserves the front elevation to be treated with more sensitivity by replacing like with like, meaning wood. So the city's guidelines say that the replacement should match the originals in pattern, details, materials, and finishes as closely as practicable, and that dimensions and profiles of muttons are subject to review. So I would like to see wood replacement windows and see the specs for them and the mutton specs. Are they going to be 7/8 of an inch or 1 inch and so on? About the height and I know the goal seems to be to create a more uniform, maybe contemporary feel, but to me that's antithetical to the character of this 18th century house. I actually, and here's where Mr. Morgan and I don't agree. I think that preserving the roof slope on the addition would mitigate the impact of a height increase. So you explained to us the lowest point under the eave line is 57 inches. So if you went up 2 feet there, and we don't really use the space under the eave line to calculate habitable space, but if you did, it would still get you 6 3/4 feet head height at the lowest point under the eave, and between 8 and 8 1/4 at the highest part of the ceiling. So instead of 97 overall flat, it'd be 97 sloping down to 87. So for me, the flat roof kind of ruins the profile and isn't compatible with the original roof. And the last thing is, I have been saying since the beginning that the application says less than 25% exterior wall demolition proposed at time of review. It makes me nervous because I anticipate this might change as water damage is revealed. And I really wish that you would talk to John Watney of Structures North in Salem, who specializes in even if it's not until exploratory demolition, when you get him so that he can explain whether the changes that you propose can be done without compromising the structural integrity of the house. So those are my thoughts: the windows, the height, and I'm just nervous about the extent of the work that's going to be done. That's it, Glenn.
Thanks. I was on mute, started talking on mute there. Thank you. So the two main things I'm hearing, first on the windows, that the solid vinyl, and Caitlin, could you do me a favor? Can you go back up in this presentation? Go way back up to the Form B. It was fairly early on. Up there it goes. I think it's 5. Okay. Now, this house is, you can barely see it. Could you, yeah, blow it up a bit? Because this was done in the 80s, and I was hoping we could see whether it had, what kind of windows were there. Oh,
That
it's
house
really-
has vinyl windows and aluminum frames, and you can walk by it anytime to see. No, the one in the corner.
No,
has
I'm not talking about the one
vinyl
in the corner.
windows.
I'm talking about the your house. And I assume you, by the way, you've closed on it. I assume it's yours now.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking at the house in the corner is kind of, that's not what I'm looking at. I'm trying to, unfortunately, there's one Form B and one photo for both properties, which is too bad because you really can't quite see very much of your property. I was hoping that geez, it almost looks like it has storm windows on it. I was hoping we'd be able to see what kind of windows were there, because that would be very useful to see. We might want to do a little bit, Patricia, maybe we could do a little digging, see, because there might be some photographs of Winter Street that would give us a clue, because you don't want to, I had this thought of maybe they were all originally 6x6, because the one in the attic is 6/6. And it's quite possible that someone in their enthusiasm for things looking old put in those 12/12s and 12s/9s and whatever, or 8s. And it's that, that was done, so that's a possibility, but we shouldn't be, guessing about something like that. We got to go with what's there, unless we've got some kind of historical record or evidence as to what to go on. Anyway, so about the windows, I agree fully with Ms.
I
Pecknick.
can zoom
yeah.
in a little bit on those. and
Glenn,
see the
I did-
12/8.
Glenn, I went to the archival center and looked at all the photos that we own at the library of the 1930s construction of Route 1, and there are no photos of this house.
Oh, that's too bad. Thanks, Patricia.
I
If
can
anyone was
see
going to do it, I
zooming
should have
in
known it'd be you.
A little bit.
Do you? What was that?
I said, I can see zooming in on that photo a little bit, that they were 12, that the bottoms were 12/12s and the tops were 12/8s.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that would
yeah.
seem to indicate that at least, does it look like they were probably the same ones that you have there now?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
But what's funny is the house next door, which is, a much more historical house,
Mhm.
has now vinyl windows with aluminum,
Yeah.
aluminum frames on it.
Yeah.
They did that 2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. I noticed that
and-
recently.
and-
It's
and-
too bad.
And from what I understand, the recommendations about wood windows and replacing them is not a requirement. It's a recommendation. And, if they weren't probably $1,200 a window, I might consider it. But, as I've shown you, those things are beyond repair.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that I don't know, $1,200 sounds kind of steep, but maybe that's what they are. I haven't priced them. At any rate, so anyway, there's the windows and the front aspect, which we're very concerned about. And then there's that rear aspect, which in the earlier discussion, it is combination of things. There's what Mr. Joe Morgan mentioned about the kind of concealing that historical eave ridgeline in the back, the fact that even though it is, quote, in the back, you have the rail trail there, and there's some foliage and some trees and stuff, but it is visible to the general public. So it's a little bit more of, we are thinking about that a bit more than we might ordinarily if there was no exposure on the backside, as there is. So those
I understand, but I don't think it's detrimental. I don't think, as I've heard this said many times, I don't think it has a detrimental impact to this historic features. I'm not trying to get rid of that gable. It's there. We're covering it up another 2 feet in a small section, as you can see in which slide is that? In the proposed rear elevation slide. You can see the actual cutout of where we are increasing the section of closing off that gable. And it's literally about a 2 foot, it's probably maybe a 10 square foot section of how much we're going to be closing off that gable. The gable, the whole left side of it is still clear. You can still see it, that it was part of the original house. You know, there literally is no detrimental impact to the features of this house. I don't understand. And you know, I don't have any problem with the structural engineer looking at it. But again, I've said that many times. You can't do it until you start some demo. You start some interior demo.
Right. What the concern is, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Premack, that, oh, it's just, you know, a couple feet on that side. But what, like looking at what we're showing right now on the Zoom meeting, this is the proposed rear elevation.
I mean, it's even more surprising based on earlier decisions that I heard this evening. That's, you know, that's what I don't understand either.
In what way?
Frustrating, because, you know, I've heard this over and over. If it's not detrimental impact to historic features, just because, no.
Well, I'd like to know what you're referring to, because
I would love to hear from those who have no comment to give on this, or why they don't, you know, what they think, why they don't like it. I'm totally keeping this thing, restoring this thing to its beautiful original state. I'm lifting up the back ridge 2 feet. Essentially, that's all I'm doing. I'm taking a slope off the roof, lifting it up 2 feet, and making it so the back of the house is livable.
Yeah, I understand.
And I've seen a lot. You know, I saw a house where it's got a little had a little gable porch, and you approved a whole second story on it. You know, the house on Liberty Street was seen far more than this. Yet you know, everybody was in an agreement that it seemed to be, you know, seemed to meet the historic features of the house.
Right, because if you look back at both of those, that one and all the ones that we looked at, the original eave lines were respected and not, you know, cut into or distorted or covered up, which is, you know, the right-hand side of that gable end of the, you know, original house there, or the original L piece is being, you know, half of it is being cut off by the addition. And I think I don't think she mentioned it this evening, but I know Patricia and I've talked about you know, I understand it'd be really nice to have consistent floor heights and ceiling heights throughout, but I mean, you're talking over 8 feet on the first floor and a good 7 feet on the second floor. I mean, in an old house, that's a real luxury versus an absolute requirement. You know what I mean? So it seems that you might be able to find a compromise, but somewhere between the slope of the addition, what you want to do, what, you know, you can tolerate as far as ceiling heights, and where the addition starts, so that, and I think that's what Ms. Pecknick was talking about. If the slope of that addition was similar to what the slope is now, then you would clear the end of that gable end, and you wouldn't distort that appearance or cut into it.
Well,
alternatively,
she did say, I'm sorry, she did say that it was 90. She felt it was 97 inches in the back. It's not 97 inches. It's 83. It's 83, and then it goes down to 67 with a step, and then 57. So it's not
Existing.
97 there.
Right, existing.
Right. So it's only at 83. I'm only trying to.
Right, but you want to make it
front of the
97.
house- The front of the house, we've already determined that back section is not original. There's no ways about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to extend the original and keep the heights for the original house. You know, they're not 10-foot ceilings. 8-foot ceilings, I don't think is outrageous to ask for.
Okay.
Glenn, if I may.
Yeah, please go ahead, Peter.
Just, I think the conversation around this gable has been pretty consistent throughout, and the discussion about the heights in what you're trying to accomplish, Mr. Premack, on that second level has been pretty consistent throughout. And I understand that you're working very hard to accommodate wishes with regards to windows and be cooperative there and whatnot, but this has been a consistent conversation, and the comments on the gable have been pretty much the same since our first meeting. You say that you know, the gable is still there, it's well represented, you're not even touching the left-hand side, and that's true, but the right side of the gable is obliterated for all intents and purposes. It is buried. So I personally, and I can't speak for the other commissioners, but the fact that that gable is being so significantly changed hasn't been mitigated, and that continues to be an issue for the commission. So I understand your frustration, and I feel bad about your frustration because I know what you're trying to accomplish with that head height. But Ms. Petnick's comments about the heights in those rooms, there's some inches to be gained there that I think you should take. And the more we look at this application with the gable still buried, the more you're going to hear the same comments.
Okay, can I ask you to look at slide 3 again? Oh, sorry, not slide 3. The proposed rear elevation. Can I ask you to look at the proposed rear elevation?
Yep, it's on display now.
Okay, so you see the cutout section, the top left of the rear addition. Okay, the dotted line going across and up.
Yes.
Okay, so I would not use the term obliterated as any kind of a description for what I'm doing to that gable. Okay, it's a 2-foot section that goes across 1.5 windows. That's literally 10 square feet. I don't know how you determined that that's an obliteration. Okay, now I'm also, yes, I'm trying very hard because you asked me why. You said previously I only showed you the outside elevations. So I came back and I showed you all of the elevations in the inside and how this thing was carved up at some point by whoever built this addition. They just put in a room off a roof, probably just framed another room off a roof. And that's why you have these different little rooms in the back. Certainly not anything to do with the original house, certainly has no historical bearing on this house whatsoever. The historical bearing on this house is out front. Totally. I get it. You can see it from the rail trail, but I'm adding a 2-foot section onto that gable. How is that obliterating its view? That's what I'd like to ask. I mean, you asked me to give you the dimensions of the inside to justify why I wanted to increase this.
Right.
Okay. But you guys don't come back and offer anything and say, you know what, if you dropped it a foot, we'd be okay with that. Well, can you drop it 6 inches? You just want me to just keep coming back and back until what? Until I hit the magic spot for you? I don't get it. Sorry for the frustration, but I seem to be doing everything that you asked and I'm still getting nowhere.
Okay.
Am I missing something with this? Has the profile of the gable changed? Has any more of this gable reemerged?
Has any more of it reemerged?
Yeah.
No, I'm taking away
then
a 2-foot section, but you can still clearly see it and again there has no detrimental impact to the historic features. Isn't that what this is all about?
Yes. Can I speak, Mr. Premack? What we're talking about is look. Are you looking at the proposed rear elevation?
Yes.
Okay. You made reference to the dotted line that shows the existing, where it has that sort of notched appearance, and so in the existing you have the full inverted V of that gable end from ridge to eave. Okay. When maybe the word obliterated seems too strong. What we're talking about is, by that word, is it's simply hidden. And there's no denying that by that, admittedly, okay, it's only to quote, only 2 feet, but that only 2 feet is covering up more than half of that. It goes from, more than half of that side over, covering up the bottom part of that, that ridge, that eave line. That's what we're talking about. And none of the other applications that we've looked at tonight did anything like that. They all respected the roof lines of the historic structure. That's the piece we're talking about.
Well, again, that's the piece that was built far after this house was originally
No,
made.
it was not. That L thing, you can, it's timber framed, and you can tell from the foundation and everything else. There's no seam in the foundation or anything. That L, that's to the towards the, it would be like kind of the northeast side, or the side that's on the left of this drawing. That is really old, probably original or very nearly. And that's my determination anyway, and I'm pretty sure I'm correct about that. So, and even if it, so that is a historical feature that we're trying to preserve. So just to be clear, we're not trying to give you a hard time. We don't want you to keep coming back and ending in frustration. We want you to succeed. But our charter is also to make sure that the city succeeds by keeping its architectural cultural heritage alive, and not, and we strike compromises all the time between developers such as yourself who want to rehabilitate a property, need to make certain changes. We get it. We get that people, need, more modern kitchens, whatever. Sometimes changes need to be made. All we're saying is, we think, and correct me if I'm wrong, group, but the sense I'm getting from nearly all our commissioners here is that with a little creativity and a little, rethinking of some of the interior spaces and the slope and ridge lines and eave lines of your addition, you can come up with something that will preserve that gable appearance and yet give you something that's a much more livable, what's what I'm looking for, living space in the addition.
Chair Richards, can
Yes.
I speak for a moment? This is Joe.
Yes,
I think you touched on it. I think Mr. Premack needs some help with a creative solution here. And I believe he had an architect with him the first meeting. I think that there's actually a title block on this sheet, JMA Architects, but we haven't heard from that individual. And I think that she might be able to help Mr. Premack come up with at least some sort of a compromise solution where they can redistribute that those heights between the first and the second floor. I think you'd still have some step down conditions, but I think you could achieve habitable space, greatly improve those spaces, and still be able to clear that gable. I'm convinced of it, but I think it requires a serious approach to the problem and coming back with some drawings that illustrate it. And I'm biased, I admit. I mean, I'm from the architecture world, but I do believe, architects can help, especially if they can produce some drawings that are clear and help, make the problem statement and offer a solution or two.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. I think you've put it pretty well. And I think that is the sentiment of at least the majority of the commission. So it's getting late. So Mr. Premack, I think where we stand is that I'm not getting this. We could, if you want us to take a vote, we could do that. But I'm getting the sense that a motion to approve your plans would not pass at this point. But if you would like us to make it official by taking a vote on a motion to approve your plans, we can do that.
Oh, you guys are obviously dying. You guys are obviously dying on your sword on this gable end. It's amazing to me. I could drop that down, and then it's going to be. I could drop that gable down so you can see more of it. I mean, do you want to see all of it? Do you need to see all of it, Or do you just want to see more of it?
What
You have a consensus on that?
I think, well, correct me if I'm wrong, some of the folks that mentioned it, such as Peter or Joe, but I think what people are suggesting is that that gable end is as a significant feature that should be preserved from, the ridge to its eave. Just like it is on the left side, you see, it probably, I don't know, I defer to my colleagues here whether they think it would be acceptable to have the top of the addition kind of be pretty much at where the the eave line is there right now. It looks like it's about maybe, I don't know, roughly a foot below.
That would be acceptable to me personally.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So
then
basically,
then you're gonna have to have a flat roof to achieve any kind of head height in there, because as you see, it starts when you're coming into there, it starts before.
Yeah, why don't you
the
have your
ridge.
architect draw it up and show it to us?
Yeah.
Glenn, it looks like Patricia has her hand up.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Patricia. Thank you.
I'm trying to be sensitive to Mr. Premack's comment about getting feedback, but it's feedback that's not specific enough. And so if I could just go back really quickly to the windows, I want to point out that on the Historical Commission's website, there are the city's guidelines, and actually specific brands are pointed to: Boston Sash and Millwork, Green Mountain Window, which was used on the Garrison House rehabilitation. Stark is another company, and Brosco, we saw that on a house that has a PR on Merrimack Street. So I just wanted to point out that when we mentioned the wood windows, that information is in the guidelines. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
I get it. Guidelines, not requirements.
Yep. Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
I
I
understand.
get it.
Well,
To repair,
yeah,
to repair some 40 windows on that house.
That's not what we're saying, Mr. Premack. We're not saying that. I think you're picking up a more adversarial tone than actually exists here. We're not fighting you on this. We're just saying that there's a reason for these guidelines, and correct me if I'm wrong, Patricia, but I think all she and I and others are saying is that on the front facade, the windows per the guidelines, at least on that facade, should be at least, they can be replacements, but they should be wood windows that at least look like historic windows. And on the other facades, here's an example where we're willing to be flexible and compromise and give you some flexibility as far as what you put in for windows there, where they're not quite as obvious to the general public.
So you'd be okay with wood windows in the front and vinyl on the side and the back?
I think that's what I'm hearing. Yeah, I know. I
Yeah.
personally would be. I know it sounds, if you're concerned about the mismatch, well,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'd rather have, I'd rather them all be wood, but I understand it gets expensive. But I should point something out.
It's not just the expense, it's the ease of use. People, you can't try cleaning a 12/12 window.
Well, it's
That's-
12/12,
that's a-
whether it's
that's-
vinyl
that's-
or whether it's vinyl or wood, it's still 12/12. So
But a
that's-
vinyl is a tilt window you can make.
well, you can
If
do
you
that
can
with
clean,
wood
You
too.
can tilt it in.
You can do that with wood
Yeah.
nowadays. You can have them tilt in, and
Twice the price.
Well, I want to address the price issue and the economics issue, because I totally get it. You're not gonna, you're not the owner that's going to live in it, but you've got to resell it. And I totally get you have to make a profit. I have no objection to that. But what I hope you might realize is that a house that is sensitively restored and properly restored is going to be worth much more than something that's just kind of, looks like the low budget solution. It's literally, people are going to be willing to pay more for it. So I think you would recoup your investment in better quality windows.
I would
really believe that.
I would argue against that. I would.
Yeah.
Only from experience.
Yeah. Well,
Only from experience. People want maintenance free. That's what they want.
Well, if they
They
want
wanna
maintenance
be-
free, they
wanna
wouldn't.
not have to worry about painting their windows. They want to not have to worry about, that this
Yeah.
is why hardy board exists. This is why
Yeah.
vinyl siding. Not that I'm a fan of vinyl siding, but this is why
Yep.
it sells. This is why it's popular.
Yep, I
Because
get it,
people-
but
I get it. You guys are, I'm not saying you guys are wrong, but you're in the minority. Put it
well,
that way.
well, that may be true, but don't forget, it's also might be a minority of people who are going to buy a 200-year-old house. People who are willing to buy an old house like that, hopefully should realize that there's a certain amount of maintenance involved. Anyway, it's getting really late, so we need to wrap this up. Can you
Yeah,
come back to?
there really wasn't a lot of people willing to buy this house, to be honest with you.
Well, it's understandable because it requires a big investment.
It's not just the investment. It's this.
What?
The going through this. People. It gets tougher and tougher. I hate to say it, but it does. It gets adversarial. I think there should be some kind of a pre-meeting or counseling. I would think that as you guys, as the representation of the city, would want to help people like me to get this done, as opposed to going back and forth.
Mr. President,
You say it's great. It's great. Somebody would say it's great that you want to buy this house and fix it up and make it nice and make it look like a jewel in the neighborhood because it's been an eyesore for so long. How can we help you? As opposed to going back and forth. Get us the interior dimensions, or we really want to keep that gable. All right, I'll go back and I'll fix the gable again. So I guess I'll go with the continuation.
I'm sorry. Before you go, Mr. Primack, Peter, were you trying to say something?
I'm fine. I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. All right. I hear your frustration, Mr. Primack. I'm sorry for it, but well, we'll see what we can what you come back with. I think hopefully the feedback we've given you tonight will help you resolve this quickly without additional delays.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So shall we be formal and before, if you're still there, Mr. Primack, do you think 14th of October gives you enough time, or do you think you'll need more?
No, that's fine.
All right. All right. So we'll continue. Is there a motion to carry this forward to the 14th of October?
So moved.
Okay. Thank you. Malcolm, is that seconded?
Second, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. Malcolm, your vote?
Yes.
Okay. Mark Central?
Yes.
Peter McNamee?
Yes.
Yeah. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay. Patricia Pecknick?
Yes.
Yeah, the chair is yes. Yeah, no problem with that, as I expected. All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Mr. Primack. And well, I don't think there's anything I can say that can improve.
Thank you as well. No,
the
thank you for
temper.
listening.
Okay.
I know you guys have a job to do.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll see you on the 14th.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
And if we do think of anything that we think will help you, we'll forward it to you through the planning board.
That would be greatly appreciated.
Okay. Okay, let's see if we can wrap this up. It's getting really late. So the correspondence, did you all have a chance to look at the correspondence from Ann Joyce? This was basically about a property at 211 Story Ave, which she did some research on. It's quite historic. She would like it to be listed as contributory. So I'll just say that I know Patricia and I have talked about this with the planning board, and what we plan to do is incorporate that into the list of properties that we've been developing for our big major project to update the list of contributing historic properties in the city. Sorry, it's getting late. And as far as updates from the chair, I can do this in like less than a minute. I met with Matthew Blanchett of Historic Hometowns. I sent you a link to that. Nothing really much to say at this point, other than that we're going to continue to get together to explore ways in which we might be able to collaborate with him and other groups who are very interested in historic preservation, particularly I think in educating the public about the benefits of preservation and practical advice on how to do it. And as far as that building subcommittee on energy, on Newburyport's Energy Advisory Committee, that ball's kind of just getting started, but we're taking some small steps. We're going to put, for example, little things like a link to Mass Save and on the Building Commission's website, so people coming in to do things with their houses, make sure they're aware of Mass Save and some of the things they can do to help them get energy efficient and so on. But more to come on that. I don't need to go further into it tonight. So that only leaves us with the approval of the last meeting's minutes. Thank you for those. Yes, yes, yes.
Chair, I'm sorry to be a buzzkill about this, but I do hope that we could all discuss whether, in our duty here to represent the public's stake in preservation, there's really any place for a city board to affiliate itself with a private project, however much Mr. Blanchett's project may comport with our own goals. And I'm asking that if anyone does have any extra time, energy, or focus to spend on historic preservation, that I would welcome some help on getting more materials ready for the inventory. So I think it should be discussed at another meeting whether or not it's appropriate for us as a city board to support a private person's preservation project.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. And okay, so we can there won't be much happening between for the next few weeks anyway. So that you can consider that one on hold for the moment, and we can discuss further how and even if we want to do anything in that area. And was that a call for you looking for some help with the contributing?
No, I'm not
list?
looking.
Oh.
No, I'm not specifically looking for help. I'm just.
Oh, okay.
If it seems like people are interested in supporting anything, I think we have a lot of work to do on
Yeah.
that and without reaching out and getting
Yeah,
allied
really.
with Matt. What he's doing is great, but I think we're a city board, and
Right.
it's not appropriate unless we have a longer conversation and take a vote. And I think that would be a unique moment in the historical commission if we were to say, okay, now we're working with
Right.
a realtor who cares about preservation.
Right.
Be appropriate.
Yeah, that's not quite what I had. That's really isn't what I had in mind either. So I'm sorry
Okay.
if I gave that
Anyway,
impression, but
we'll talk about another time. Sorry.
yep, not a problem. No,
Great.
it's a legitimate concern. Anything else before we move to the approval of last meeting's minutes? If not, does anyone move to approve the minutes from our last meeting? I believe it was September 9th.
This is Joe Morgan. I move to approve the minutes from September 9th.
Okay, is there a second?
Mark Sento, and I second.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Malcolm, were you here? I think you were here last week, right? Or last meeting? Okay.
Yeah, I approve.
Okay, Mark Syndrome.
Yes.
Okay. Peter, I think was that the one you were absent from?
I was absent, yes.
Okay. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, and Patricia Pecknick?
Yes.
And the chair is yes. That was actually a blessedly short meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So moved.
Okay, that was Malcolm again.
Seconded, Joe.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Mr. Conrath?
Yes.
Okay, Mark Zendrone?
Yes.
Mr. McNamee?
Yes.
Okay, Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay, Patricia Pecknick?
Yes.
And your ever-loving chair, yes. And that officially closes this meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission. Thank you all for your time and attention, especially when it goes late like this. It's much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you. You too.